I'd like to give a content warning before we start. This video will deal heavily with topics of suicide and gratuitous violence. Just want you to know what you're getting into beforehand. A man sits in a room, writing something on a piece of paper. He pauses to think for a moment, then writes some more. He finishes, then stands up, and hangs himself. There is only silence as his body slowly rots. We see a strange white circle on a solid black background. And then the man wakes up. He's back in the same room, the exact same place. Everything's exactly the same as it just was, but he's still alive. This is the intense beginning of the webcomic Demon by Jason Shiga. Jason Shiga is an American comic artist. I was introduced to his work when I was a kid in middle school or high school through his graphic novel Meanwhile. This is a graphic novel unlike any other I've ever seen. It's a choose-your-own-adventure style story, but the physical mechanism of how you traverse the panels and the pages is wholly unique. You don't read a bit, then get a page number and flip to where the story continues next. Instead, you follow these pipes from panel to panel. Then the pipes will trace onto these tabs on the pages. When you follow those tabs, they take you to the next page and the next panel where the story continues. Shiga uses this gimmick in brilliant ways. It's really ingenious. Actually, when Shiga mapped out Meanwhile, he had to use a computer algorithm to determine the most efficient way to lay out the story in book form. It's really quite remarkable. This ingenuity and creativity is evident in all of Shiga's works. I'm going to talk about two of Shiga's comics that I really love in this video. The main one I want to talk about is Demon. It's quite long and is the main reason I wanted to make this video. But before that, I want to talk about a much shorter comic Shiga wrote in 2002. This shorter comic has a lot of parallels to Demon and I think will be a fun introduction to Shiga's style. This comic is called Fleep. A man named Jimmy walks into a phone booth. He closes the door. There is a bright flash of light. Then everything is dark. The last thing he remembers is that he was about to call Jenny, his wife. Now he's waking up in the pitch black phone booth, crumpled on the ground with a pounding headache. In the dark, he struggles to his feet and finds the door to the phone booth. It won't open, so instead he tries fully closing it. A light turns on. Outside the front door is a solid wall of concrete. It surrounds the phone booth on every side. He has no way of knowing whether it's an inch thick or a mile thick. He picks up the phone. There's a dial tone, which means he has a connection. He dials 911 and gets nothing. He dials the operator. Tenendrak Nats Arnik, a female voice says. Total gibberish. The man opens the phone book under the phone to try and look up what the woman on the phone said. The phone book is also written in gibberish. He realizes the phone booth no longer says phone over the door. It says Fleep. He really starts to panic now. Jimmy is smart, and he starts to think about what he knows about his situation. He's trapped in a phone booth, encased in concrete. Everything around him is in a language he doesn't know. He has no idea what happened or how he got here. First, how long can he survive like this? A human can go 2 days without water before dying of dehydration. Jimmy starts a 48-hour timer on his watch. What about air? Is air a problem? Jimmy measures the dimensions of the phone booth. It's 3 by 4 by 9 cubic hand spans. Using paper from the phone book, he folds an origami balloon to test his breathing rate. He breathes about 1 cubic handspan every 5 seconds, which he can recycle 5 times before getting dizzy. That means he has 56 hours of air before he'll suffocate. He'll die of dehydration first, unless he can figure out a way to recycle his fluids. Jimmy next goes over what he has on hand. In his coat and pants pockets, he finds 2 ballpoint pens, 20 feet of dental floss, unwaxed, a digital wristwatch, a Russian paperback, 3 coins of unknown currency, and a handwritten note. The handwritten note is written in what looks like Russian. He can't read any of it except for 2 words, Jenny Chu, his wife's name. On the back of the note are 2 6-digit numbers. This is everything he has with which he must fashion his escape. The paperback seems to be a dictionary translating between Russian and another unknown language. The coins in his pockets also seem to be written in this strange language. He uses the coins to unscrew the phone booth's light fixture from the ceiling. That gives him a bowl to pee in. As for the floss, he can always use it to get out some food he feels stuck in his teeth. Jimmy sits on the floor holding the light fixture, now full of pee. If he drinks it, it might only be adding another 8 hours to his life before he dies of asphyxiation. But it's possible he could be rescued in those 8 hours, which would add another 40 years to his life. Even if there's only a 1 in 100 chance of rescue in those 8 hours, that still averages out to 2 months added to his life for every sip of pee, according to his math. Jimmy drinks the pee. Now he's only limited by his 56 hours of air. Upon closer examination, there is a 6-digit number written on the payphone. The payphone's number. This could mean that the 6-digit numbers on the back of the note are also phone numbers. The first number is dead, the second number rings once, then goes dead as well. The payphone doesn't return Jimmy's coin, so he only has 2 left. Suddenly, the whole phone booth starts rumbling. An earthquake, or an aftershock. If there was an earlier earthquake, that could explain why the booth is buried in concrete. But the booth Jimmy remembers walking into on the first page wasn't inside of a building, it was on the sidewalk. Jimmy's getting tired. His watch shows he has 37 hours left of his 56 hours of air, which means he's been in the booth for 19 hours. He's exhausted, but he has to stay awake. Upon closer inspection of his watch, he realizes it's 1 p.m., not a.m. Why is he tired then? The next thing Jimmy does is actually insane. Using the dental floss, he suspends the light fixture bowl to the ceiling, weighs it down with the books, and turns it into a pendulum. He swings it back and forth to make a Foucault pendulum, those things you see in science museums. As the pendulum swings, its swings slowly rotate, knocking down sequential pegs. I don't know what he's using for pegs, maybe they're parts of the pens. Jimmy uses his watch to time the rate of the pendulum's drift and calculates his latitude to be somewhere in 37 to 49 degrees north. He then estimates his longitude, judging by the disparity in his body's internal clock and the time in his watch, to be between 129 and 147 degrees. Don't ask me how he deduces this, I don't understand his reasoning at all. Jimmy finds a map in the back of the phone book. His calculations place him in an area the size of Texas on the eastern coast of Russia, or the Soviet Union. Either this phone book is older than 1991, or this comic is taking place in the 80s instead of 2002 when it was written. Jimmy doesn't think he's in Russia because he has a travel dictionary with him, and he knows he's not in the middle of the ocean, so that means he could only be in one place. The island nation of Symbia. Symbia isn't a real place, by the way. This tracks with his other observations. The 6-digit phone numbers, 911 not working, the gibberish language in the phone book and in the dictionary. It must be Symbionese. Jimmy deduces that he must have been in Symbia visiting his wife Jenny's family when an earthquake hit. He ran for the phone booth for shelter since it was underneath a concrete enclosure. There's a seam in the concrete along the floor of the doorway. The roof of the concrete enclosure must have collapsed and fallen in front of the door. The force of the collapse must have made Jimmy hit his head, which could have resulted in amnesia, making him forget about the time between now and when he last remembers walking into a normal phone booth in the States, where he was going to call Jenny and tell her he was running late. That might have been years or even decades ago. Jimmy checks the phone book for the American embassy. He's able to find it because it's written Romanized. He calls the number, but the line is dead. What about chiseling his way out? Jimmy rips the bracket holding the phone book off and uses it to chisel a small hole in the wall. He measures his rate of chiseling and extrapolates out to his 31 remaining hours. He calculates that he would make a hole 1 inch wide and 12 inches deep by the time he died. That's not going to get him anywhere. Jimmy turns back to the payphone. Calling 911 didn't work because Symbia must have a different emergency number. It's probably 2 or 3 digits, so it can be called quickly in an emergency. It likely also has 2 ones in it so that it can be dialed quickly from a rotary phone. That makes 29 numbers for him to try. But what would he say if he got a hold of an emergency operator? His only way out of here is through the phone. That gives him 30 hours to learn Symbionese, using nothing but a Russian to Symbionese dictionary, and he doesn't speak any Russian. Luckily, the front of the dictionary has numbers written in Symbionese. Jimmy dials the phone operator again. This time he says Fleep and the payphone's number written on the phone. Fleep teleding 10 gilba, the operator says. Jimmy hangs up. He's just learned some new vocabulary. He heard the Symbionese number for 10, which he learned from the phone book, followed by the word gilba. That was probably the amount of money the operator wanted him to deposit. Teleding likely means deposit or put in. Using this very limited information, Jimmy calls the 29 emergency number candidates and says Fleep teleding Jimmy. He doesn't get a response from any of the numbers and just leaves messages. Hopefully one of them will call him back. But several more hours pass and none of them do. Only 23 more hours of oxygen. Jimmy only has 2 more coins, 2 more calls. Fortunately, it doesn't take a coin to dial the operator or emergency services. Jimmy has a realization. What if this phone booth was but one in a row of booths? Maybe he can reach other booths by calling the next or previous consecutive number. When he does this, he can hear ringing through the concrete. Jimmy does some more insane math here I don't understand. He doesn't know how fast sound dissipates through concrete, but from listening to the sound, he can deduce a ratio, which he can use in a triangulation matrix to calculate that there's 3 to 4 inches of concrete between him and the next phone booth over. That would only take him 10 hours of chiseling to reach, and would give him a whole 56 more hours of breathable air. Jimmy tries calling the next phone booth in the sequence, 2 booths away from his. Someone picks up. A woman's voice speaking Russian. She sounds panicked. She doesn't speak any English and keeps repeating the same phrase, but Jimmy doesn't speak any Russian. He reads the number for the Russian embassy to her, but it's possible she doesn't have any change. Jimmy decides to relay her message to the Russian embassy for her. He doesn't know what she's saying, but he can repeat it phonetically. It takes him a second to find the number for the Russian embassy in the phone book, because Symbionese has its own word for Russian, but eventually he finds it. He uses his last 10 gilba coin to make the call, and the line is dead. Why is every number Jimmy calls not working? The next number in the sequence for the booth after the Russian woman also doesn't work. He's tried every number for the embassy in the phone book and none of them have worked. Then Jimmy makes an alarming realization. All the Russian embassy numbers have the same 3-digit prefix, the same prefix as his payphone. Jimmy is in the Russian embassy. Jimmy is in a collapsed Russian embassy. Why did he assume the rumble he felt was an earthquake? Well, because he's from California, that's why, but Symbia isn't on any fault line. When you think of a collapsed embassy, you think of military or terrorist attacks. You think of a bomb. If it was a bomb, how was it detonated? Remote detonation is unlikely because modern embassies have jamming devices to block incoming radio frequencies, but one could always use a cable or telephone line. And why does Jimmy know so much about how to set off bombs? What about the aftershock Jimmy felt? Could that instead have been a second bomb? Judging by the strength of the second explosion, Jimmy thinks it must have been a bomb placed 5 to 6 blocks away from him. He draws such a ring around the Russian embassy on a map. Lying perfectly within the ring is the American embassy. That's why none of the phone numbers there worked. The prefix for the American embassy numbers is the same as the first number Jimmy called from the back of the handwritten note he found on himself. When he called that number, an American embassy number, it rang once, right before the line went dead, and then the aftershock hit. Jimmy must have called at the exact moment the bomb was triggered, because his phone call was what triggered the bomb, because Jimmy is the terrorist. Why would he do something like this and kill so many innocent people? It must have something to do with the handwritten note. It's written in his handwriting, and it's signed by him. It's written in Russian instead of Symbionese, which means it was meant to be read by the Russians after Jimmy died. This is Jimmy's manifesto, and he doesn't even know what it says. Jimmy works out a rough Symbionese translation from the Russian text of his manifesto. He'll read the translation to the Symbionese authorities. They'll find an English negotiator for him. He'll use his last 10 gilba to make the call. He does it. In broken Symbionese, Jimmy reads his manifesto over the phone to the operator. His demands are met. An English-speaking negotiator is on the phone with him. The negotiator refers to him as the head of the Symbionese Liberation Front, and Jimmy says this is correct. Jimmy knows he's either going to die or be rescued and arrested, so he asks for one last chance to speak with his wife before he does. But the negotiator tells him this is impossible. Jimmy gets angry. Do they want him to blow up a third building, he threatens? But the negotiator says that he just said in his own manifesto that his wife died 2 years ago. She was one of the civilian casualties in the joint American-Russian air raids. Jimmy hangs up the phone. The phone booth sways in his vision. He takes his chisel and smashes it into the concrete wall in anger. The phone rings. A man on the line says he can't believe Jimmy is alive. His name is Alan. He's Jimmy's comrade from the Symbionese Liberation Front. He tells Jimmy that it'll take search and rescue 2 more days to reach his floor. Jimmy looks at the hole he's chiseled into the adjacent booth. A booth full of oxygen. He can survive for 2 more days. But when Alan insists that Jimmy is going to live, Jimmy doesn't respond. He tells him about the Russian woman 2 booths away from him. He gives her number and tells Alan to have search and rescue call her, tell her to face the door and start chiseling to her left. There's an empty booth with 2 days worth of oxygen 5 inches away. But wait. We know there's no booth to the woman's right. Hers is the last in the row because none of the phone numbers after hers worked. The booth to the woman's left is the one to Jimmy's right, the same booth that he chiseled his own way to, his salvation. Jimmy's not going to survive, but survival was never his main goal. His real goal was to be reunited with Jenny. His sacrifice was arrived at through the same logic and calculations he's been using this whole time. Jimmy stuffs torn sheets of paper into the hole. It's a long shot, but redemption is the only shot he has left. We see an overhead view of the 3 phone booths. Jimmy sitting in the first, the second booth of life-giving air, and the woman in the third beginning to chisel her way to survival. Jimmy sits on the concrete floor. According to his calculations, he shouldn't have begun hallucinating for another hour and 23 minutes. which means the voice he hears beckoning him from behind the phone booth door must be real, unless his own calculations were a hallucination. The voice sounds so real, so familiar. It's Jenny, and Jimmy goes to her. And that's Fleep. It's short, less than 50 pages long. You can read it in less than an hour. I wanted to talk about Fleep first as a contrast and comparison to the story that we're about to discuss, and which will make up the main bulk of this video, that being Shiga's comic Demon. A lot of Shiga's style that we saw in Fleep can be seen in Demon as well. Demon is full of math and problem solving. The main character spends much of the comic applying math and logic to difficult situations to understand what's happening to him and what he needs to do to survive. And the main character of Demon is also named Jimmy and looks exactly like the Jimmy from Fleep. In fact, Shiga has used this Jimmy character in several of his comics, but these are not stories about the same person. They are totally distinct comics. I guess Shiga is just comfortable drawing this character in his simplistic style. Shiga began working on Demon in 2010 and published it on his website from 2014 to 2016. He also self-published the comic until it was picked up by a publisher after the webcomic's conclusion. The webcomic is divided into 21 issues, and the graphic novel edition combines these into 4 volumes. Demon is drawn in the same simplistic cartoon style as the rest of Shiga's work, which is in stark contrast to the very graphic content of the story. What begins as a story of a man with a supernatural power he doesn't understand spirals out into a massive and very, very graphic and violent story. That's really why I'm making this video. Demon is an incredible comic that I think deserves more attention, but I basically can't recommend anyone to go out and read it themselves. So that's what I'm here for. I'm going to give you a detailed summary of this incredible comic. If the story sounds interesting and you're okay with gratuitous violence, gore, drug use, sex, and suicide, then absolutely go read this comic yourself. It's available in its entirety absolutely for free on Shiga's website, shigababy.com. Alright, are we all ready? Let's begin. In the year 2014, one man will stand alone, an insane megalomaniac with no conscience, no shame, and no limits will unleash his most ambitious comic to date, Demon. He has no limits. He does not. A man sits in a room, writing something on a piece of paper. He pauses to think for a moment, then writes some more. He finishes, then stands up and hangs himself. There is only silence as his body slowly rots. We see a strange white circle on a solid black background. And then the man wakes up. He's back in the same room, the exact same place. Everything's exactly the same as it just was, but he's still alive. But I should be dead, he says. The pad of paper he wrote his suicide note on just moments before is now blank again. Sunbeam Motel, Oakland, California, the letterhead reads. The man looks around the room. There is no rope hanging from the ceiling fan. He finds a Bible in the drawer of the dresser. A Bible, but not the rope he just used to kill himself. He looks at himself in the mirror. Even though all evidence of his suicide has vanished, he seems to have some sort of strange tan line around his neck. I've been given a second chance at life. Frick. He storms out of the bathroom and sits down to write out his suicide note a second time. Then he starts the bath, pulls the blade out of a razor, and gets in the bath fully clothed. He slits his wrists and then goes to sleep. We see a white circle on a solid black background. He wakes up. He's in the same room, and he's still alive. It's 12:51 p.m., 15 minutes later than the last time he woke up. His wrists are bare of any kind of marks. There's no rope hanging from the ceiling fan. In the bedside table is a Bible and a gun. All right, he says. He smacks the gun down and sits down to write his third suicide note. He wraps the pistol in a towel and shoots himself in the head. And then he wakes up. He's in the bathtub instead of in bed. His wrists are bare of any marks. The shower tile next to him is broken. Embedded in the wall next to him is a bullet. By the sink, he finds a prescription bottle. He downs the whole bottle. A few minutes later, he clutches his stomach in pain and collapses on the floor. He wakes up. He is not happy. It's 1:13 p.m. In the bedroom dresser is a Bible, no gun. He slams the drawer shut. He writes a suicide note. He walks into the bathroom where there's a corpse on the floor. His corpse. The tile in the wall has the same hole in it from the bullet he saw before. and the corpse has no head. He walks out the door to the motel parking lot, walking past several other rooms. There's a highway by the motel and a truck approaching. He jumps in front of the truck. There's that increasingly familiar white circle on a solid black background again. The man wakes up, but he doesn't wake up in the motel. Instead, he's lying in a hospital bed. He is not having that, though. He's about to get up and leave, but he's stopped by a nurse. And then we have the first scene with dialogue in the whole comic, and we learn that the man's name is Jimmy Yee. The nurse tells Jimmy he's had a concussion and he needs to stay in bed. Seeing as how he jumped in front of an 18-wheeler, he's a bit incredulous that all he ended up with was a concussion. Jimmy wants to get discharged from the hospital, of course. He's trying to understand what's happening, so his plan is to film his next suicide attempt so that he can directly observe what's happening to him when he dies. Or doesn't die. We get to see what Jimmy wrote in his suicide note. He apologized to whoever found him and had to clean up his body, but he very pragmatically decided to kill himself in a motel instead of in his house, so that he would be found sooner and the mess wouldn't be as bad. He also writes that he left a few $100s in the motel nightstand to cover the cost of cleanup. This explains why he was always checking the nightstand every time he woke up after killing himself. Not only had his rope disappeared, but so had the money he left. We also learned that Jimmy chose this motel in particular for no reason other than that it was the first one he found on his way after fleeing from the bank he tried to rob the day before. The panels show the robbery playing in reverse, a bullet flying back into a gun with "blam" written backwards, as we move backwards in time to the series of events that led to the bank robbery and his suicide. Jimmy's life used to be happy. He had a loving wife and daughter and a good job at an actuarial firm. We see fond memories of him playing catch with his daughter and teaching her how to throw a ball. Jimmy tells his daughter he's going to throw her a screwball and she braces herself. Then a page turn cuts to the car crash that took his wife and daughter's lives. Jimmy survived. After physically recovering, he returned to work and his usual life, but it wasn't the same. The one thing that brought him any joy was knowing that the drunk driver who had caused the accident, Heron Marsh, had been left in a coma. When he woke up, he was severely brain damaged and placed in federal prison. On the week of what would have been his daughter's 10th birthday, Jimmy made a plan to avenge his family's death. He decided to rob a bank, presumably for funds to pull off this plan, but it didn't go as planned. A teller ended up shot and probably killed, and Jimmy fled the police to the motel. "I know my family would want me to press on," he writes, "but the thought of spending the rest of my life in prison is too much for me to bear. So I'm out. Signed, Jimmy." We cut back to the nurse reading him his medical chart. He has no broken bones or hemorrhaging, just the concussion and some bruises. He's lucky to be alive, she tells him. The nurse goes to get the doctor so Jimmy can sign whatever forms he needs to be discharged, and a visitor comes into his hospital room. "Daddy, I'm so glad you're okay," the girl says. This is not his daughter. The girl tells Jimmy she's his daughter, Sarah, and that her mom is on her way. They leave the hospital and Jimmy asks the girl some questions. Sarah's 23 years old, not 10 like his own daughter would be. In this strange new life, Jimmy's not an accountant. They arrive at their home and Jimmy doesn't recognize anything. There's a family portrait on the wall full of people Jimmy doesn't recognize. He's not even in it. Jimmy excuses himself to the bathroom to try and think. He talks through what he knows and possible explanation for what's going on. Maybe the woman claiming to be his daughter is crazy. Maybe he did die and now he's in hell. Or maybe it's like It's a Wonderful Life and he's in some parallel world where he and his wife Donna never met and their daughter Sweet Pea was never born. Yes, his daughter's name is Sweet Pea. He consistently refers to her by this name, so this doesn't seem to just be a term of endearment. Sweet Pea Yee. Jimmy asks the girl claiming to be his daughter for a phone book where he's able to find his wife's name, Donna Yee, and their home address. Jimmy grabs a phone, but before he can make a call, a woman comes to the door. She throws herself on him, saying she's so glad he's okay. This must be Betty, Sarah's mom, and presumably his wife. Jimmy excuses himself and tries to call his own phone, but just gets his own answering machine. So, in this reality, the person Jimmy Yee does still exist. He takes his personal things from the women and declares he's leaving. They of course protest, but he ignores them. We cut to Jimmy driving, silencing calls from Sarah as he goes. He drives to his own home, but he can't get in without his keys. In the mailbox is a bunch of junk mail, which he uses to cushion his fist as he punches a window in. It's his home, just as he remembers it. We even see a cane leaning against the wall, which must have been from his physical therapy and recovery from the car accident that killed his wife and daughter. There's a family photo, but this time of his actual family, him and Donna and Sweet Pea. He eats some leftovers from the fridge. He continues to ignore call after call from Sarah. Jimmy turns on the TV where the news is reporting on a series of 4 deaths the previous night at Sunbeam Motel. One of the victims was identified as Jimmy Yee. Jimmy thinks he knows what's going on, but decides to move forward with filming his next suicide attempt to be sure. He finds some bleach under the sink and sets up his video camera in the living room. He films a quick test video of himself to make sure the camera's working, but when he watches the video back on the camera, the person in the video isn't him. It's not his face in the recording. There's a knock at the door. 2 police officers are standing on the front porch. They came on report of a break-in, but Jimmy explains that this is actually his home. He just lost his keys. The officers ask him for his ID. The ID in his wallet is for a man named Donald Bay, the same man in the video camera footage. The officers immediately handcuff and arrest him. Jimmy runs through what he knows again in the backseat of the cop car, trying to make sense of this impossible situation. Then he has an epiphany. He knows what's happening to him. We cut to Jimmy being interrogated by the police, asking him what he was doing in Mr. Yee's house. The detective or officer interrogating him spells out an explanation. He, Donald Bay, knew about Yee's bank robbery and found him and killed him for the money he'd stolen and made it look like a suicide. Then he killed the rest of the people at the motel. The police say they can even place him at the scene of the crime. Jimmy says that's not true. He's not Donald Bay. He's a demon. He points at a map of the crime scene with the 4 dead bodies in the motel marked with their causes of death. He's figured out that he must be currently possessing the body of the truck driver, Donald Bay. We see on the other side of a one-way mirror are other police officers watching the interrogation. Jimmy Yee is in the interrogation room, but Donald Bay is on the video footage. Jimmy's original body is in the morgue now, but his spirit isn't. It must have transferred to another body. After robbing the bank and killing himself, Jimmy's spirit possessed the person in the next room over in the motel. This is why, if you notice, the color of his shirt changed after each suicide. Because the furniture and layout of the motel rooms were identical, he didn't realize that he'd woken up in a different room each time. First, he hung himself, then he slit his wrists. Then in the 3rd room, he shot himself in the head where the bullet embedded in the wall of the next room, right by the bathtub he moved to. But that room had 2 occupants, not 1, so after he killed himself by overdosing on sleeping pills, his spirit possessed the nearest person, which was the other occupant of the motel room. Finally, he killed himself by jumping in front of a truck, which led to him possessing the body of the truck driver, who was closest to him when he died. The next page gives a diagram of what happened, explaining the 4 deaths at the motel, followed by the final death in the truck accident. After listening to all of this, the detective says, "So you're saying you were involved in the robbery?" I mean, that's a good takeaway from all this if you hadn't just watched it happen, yeah. Jimmy starts freaking out, saying he'll never make it in prison. His Asian skin is so smooth and baby soft. The other police officer tells him Californian prisons are nicer than the maximum security prisons in the movies, and that he probably won't even get, I'm not even gonna say that, if he joins an Asian gang. Before Jimmy can be taken away, another officer steps into the room, saying there's an Agent Hunter from the OSS on the line. He says it's about your subject, he says. Turns out there's a federal investigator at the station. Maybe Jimmy will be going to a maximum security prison after all. Jimmy throws his chair at the man and rushes him. The first officer shoots him, and Jimmy slumps down, bleeding on the floor. Then suddenly, he switches bodies. The officer's face changes to Jimmy's, and his old body's head disappears, just like the corpse he found in the motel. The other detective calls Jimmy Detective Grimes and asks him if he's okay. This exactly confirms Jimmy's theories. He literally giggles to himself when he realizes this. He's in the body of Detective Grimes. He can just walk out of the room now. To anyone else, he looks like Grimes. He makes it halfway out of the station before someone stops him. It's Agent Hunter, the federal agent on the phone earlier. Jimmy tries to leave, but Hunter stops him, saying he needs Jimmy, or Grimes, to take him to the suspect, Donald Bay. Hunter then asks Jimmy who was standing closest to Bay when he was killed. Jimmy starts to sweat. If he's asking that, then this guy must know how his demon powers work. Jimmy pulls Grimes' gun on Hunter and demands some answers. Hunter calls him Jimmy and tells him he can explain everything. He tells everyone in the station to clear a large radius around him and Jimmy. Hunter pulls out a taser and the two have a standoff. Hunter promises him that he can be granted a full pardon for his crimes, but Jimmy's holding a gun, so he shoots himself in the head. Hunter stands over his body. Everyone else in the room was standing much farther from Jimmy than Hunter was, but Hunter didn't get possessed. He starts running. He kicks open a door out of the station and into an alleyway, but it's empty. There wasn't anyone else closer to Jimmy than Hunter was, except maybe on the floor above them. Upstairs is an office space full of people working. Hunter calls for everyone's attention. When suddenly he gets shot at, Jimmy unloads his pistol while people around him tackle him. From their perspective, their co-worker suddenly opening fire on a federal agent. Hunter's been hurt. In the struggle, Jimmy shoots one of the men holding him. Then he manages to turn his gun around and shoot himself in the head once again. One of the two surviving men calls for an ambulance for the man Jimmy shot, Campbell. He's still breathing. The other asks Hunter what the heck just happened, and Hunter tases him. Then he pepper sprays the other. Campbell, bleeding on the ground, starts to reach for the gun. Hunter kicks it away from him. Hunter takes the gun and then speaks. "All right, whichever one of you is Jimmy, let me introduce myself. I'm Special Agent Hunter with the OSS. I'd like you to come and work for us." Jimmy, in Campbell's body and bleeding out on the ground, tells Hunter to suck his private sector balls. Sometime later, paramedics arrive. Hunter tells them to leave Jimmy out of national security. The paramedic tells him he's got 2 to 3 hours to live if he doesn't get surgery, maybe 5 if they stop his bleeding. So Hunter starts a 5-hour timer on his watch and tells them to get him some tourniquets. We cut to a dying Jimmy being literally dumped into a prison cell. I'm not sure what Hunter told these paramedics to convince them to treat a workplace shooting victim like this. Maybe they also work for the OSS. That stands for the Office of Strategic Services, by the way. It's a real branch of the government. In the cell next to Jimmy's is one Mason Addix, a death row inmate. Hunter tells his men to clear Mason's cell of literally everything. No trays, no cloth, not one scrap of paper lest he paper cut himself to death. The cells are 10 feet wide, so they clear a 20-foot radius around Jimmy in every direction, 2 floors above and 2 below. Then he leaves Jimmy a generous 7 hours to bleed out, after which he'll be forced to possess Mason. Jimmy only barely figured out what exactly his demon power was and how it seems to work, and now he's already met his match in Hunter, a man who seems incredibly knowledgeable in demons and how to circumvent Jimmy's powers. Who is this guy? Jimmy is bleeding to death and trapped. It's time to think. Hunter's coming back in 7 hours. According to Hunter, Jimmy has a job with the OSS if he wants it. But what kind of job would that be? His guess is assassinations, killing African warlords or something. Not a life he's interested in. And that's just the best case scenario. Worst case is they dissect him alive for science, figure out a way to use him to demonize their own agents instead. Then he would spend the rest of existence in full restraints, dying of bed sores every decade or so. Jeez. Jimmy says it's funny, just 24 hours ago all he wanted was to die. But now that he knows he's a demon, he says there's something he has to do first. Which means first he needs to get out of this prison. Jimmy does some math. If he can get Mason, the death row inmate in the cell next to him, to stand in the top far corner of his cell, Jimmy might be able to possess someone 3 stories below him. He does some quick math on the floor of his cell. Because of the height of the cell, he could get 24 feet away from Mason and possibly possess someone else. Jimmy takes his shirt off and ties a noose. He explains to Mason through the wall why it's in his best interest to cooperate so he doesn't get possessed and die. Jimmy definitely expects him to cooperate, but Mason just sits there in the middle of his cell, totally naked, like, okay, tippy toes, got it. Bro is not having it. Jimmy freaking hangs himself and then possesses Mason, of course. Now Jimmy's head is shown on Mason's body, but we know that to anyone else, he just looks like Mason. He's possessing Mason's body. Now he has 7 hours to find a way to kill himself using literally nothing but a 2-ply piece of toilet paper he found stuck in his butt. Oh boy, can't wait to see how Jimmy gets out of this one. Actually, maybe we should have waited, because the plan he comes up with is, it sure is something. Like always, Jimmy starts going through his options and possible plans. The toilet paper is probably too flimsy for him to choke on, and also too flimsy for him to fold into a shiv and stab himself with. Maybe if he had some kind of glue or paste, he could make a paper mache strong enough to pierce his skin. Bashing his head into the wall and killing himself from blunt force trauma wouldn't work either, because he'd knock himself unconscious before he could kill himself. So he tries to choke himself on his own vomit. He makes himself throw up on the floor and then scoops up a handful and tries his best to inhale the vomit. Yeah, this story is very gross and shocking, and we're just getting started. Jimmy thinks back to what his skills are: a near photographic memory and 20 years of experience at a leading actuarial firm. He's spent his whole career studying data about what kills people, and he's never seen a cause of death of asphyxiation due to vomit. The effective forms of suicide, he says, are hanging, poison, and severing a major vein or artery. What he wouldn't give for a toothbrush or a library card or 3 drops of glue, he says. For a moment, he thinks maybe he can use the vomit as a glue, but vomit doesn't harden when it dries, it cakes. What about the puddle of liquid in the corner of the cell? He tastes it with his finger. Nope, just urine, he says. And then he thinks of a possible source of glue he does in fact have access to. Yeah, it's written in big letters on the screen right now. And Jimmy goes through the math of how frequently he can and how much he... Yeah, I'm just gonna skip ahead. Meanwhile, Hunter seems to be reviewing the footage of Jimmy's interrogation. Another agent with an eye patch named Denny comes in. They say how long they've been training for this opportunity. So though the OSS knows about demons, this must be the first time they've captured one. Hunter briefs his team. They're to only use tasers, clubs, mace, only non-lethal weapons. They want to do everything in their power to ensure Jimmy stays in the body they know he's in and doesn't hop without them knowing. Hunter has the rest of the men keep a large distance behind him. Denny stays close to him and keeps a taser trained on Hunter. They come to Jimmy's cell and Mason's cell. Inside are 2 corpses. Jimmy successfully made a shiv out of the toilet paper and improvised glue and used it to stab himself in the neck. Jimmy did it. He escaped. We see him driving on open highway. But what now? He knows Hunter and his men will be after him. Jimmy needs to be untraceable. He's only going to work in cash now, so Hunter can't track suspicious credit cards. Get rid of the car so that it can't be traced back to the prison guard who checked out early and never made it home. Jimmy is up against a whole branch of the OSS, with the whole force of the US military-industrial complex behind it. Jimmy also knows as he hops bodies, he can't leave a recognizable trail. He needs to use different, unique suicide methods and possess different types of victims every time, not just armed men with tons of cash. Jimmy's thinking long-term. He's gonna try and lay low for hundreds of years, outlive Hunter, and maybe even outlive the OSS itself. He orders some food at a diner. Some food and a Diet Coke. Then he thinks, make that a regular Coke. Why watch your health when you can just possess people who are healthy? Hunter and his men are reviewing their profile of Jimmy. Jimmy Yee, 44 years old. Didn't realize he was a demon until the previous day when he tried to kill himself. Jimmy has spent his entire life in Oakland, California, and he has no family. His wife and daughter are dead, as we know, but so are both of his parents. Hunter suggests keeping snipers stationed at his mother's grave, presumably at all times in case he ever happens to visit. But Denny says some things they know about him that make it clear Jimmy has no kind feelings toward his parents. Next, Hunter asks if he has any great dreams in life. Like, if he expressed a dream in being an astronaut, then the OSS would just stake the homes of any astronauts slated for launches soon to catch Jimmy if he tried to possess them. But Denny says that since the age of 12, all Jimmy ever wanted in life was to be an actuary. Jimmy is a nobody, it seems. Is there a celebrity or politician he's always wanted to meet? No, in the last 15 years, he's never purchased a single DVD, CD, or book. He doesn't attend movies, sporting events, or church, and he's not registered to vote. It seems robbing the Bank of Oakland was the only interesting thing he's done in his life. But why did he rob a bank for 12 grand when he had $500,000 in savings? If they can figure out why he needed that 12 grand, they can figure out where he'll go next. Jimmy has the ability to become anyone in the entire world, Denny says, but he says most likely he'll just possess actuaries or accountants for a few hundred years. The funding for their branch of the OSS will dry up in 30 to 50 years, and they'll all be dead a few decades after that. But Hunter says he knows exactly where to find Jimmy right now. We cut to Jimmy at the Baltimore Zoo on the other side of the country. He throws a banana to a monkey and then shoots himself in the head. He does not, however, possess the monkey. He possesses another human. Jimmy is testing the capabilities and restrictions of his abilities. The power doesn't cross the human-chimp boundary, but he might still test the human-bonobo boundary. Are there just gonna be multiple suicides at the Baltimore Zoo today? No, that'd be too obvious for the OSS to track. Next, Jimmy is in Indiana. He probably should be keeping a lower profile, but he says there's something he needs to do before it's too late. But to pull off whatever he's got planned, he needs to understand demonism inside and out through careful observation paired with rigorous experimentation. So we get to see some of that experimentation. Using some poor sap and a clock and walkie-talkie, he's able to shoot himself a great distance away in the desert and possess this person before the sound of his distant gunshot reaches him. From this, he deduces the speed of his possession ability, somewhere between Mach 3 and instantaneous. Jimmy experiments with what abilities or traits of his host body are passed to him. He doesn't gain their artistic or musical skills, their language skills, not even really their physical strength. He possesses a bodybuilder and isn't able to adduct nearly as much weight on an exercise machine as the bodybuilder had just before he possessed him. This suggests to Jimmy that even physical skills have a much larger mental component than he thought. Unfortunately, Jimmy's never been a very physically gifted guy. When he was a kid, he quit karate when he realized, based on his rate of improvement, it would take him 350 years to master a basic roundhouse kick. The useful skills that Jimmy does carry with him from body to body are his own mental skills. He's incredibly talented at fast mental calculations. He can still cube two-digit numbers while possessing a dyslexic third grader. In fact, his powers are revealing to him that a great number of physical conditions are in fact merely mental states. Being drunk, tranquilized, asleep, in a coma, left-handed, schizophrenic, and even colorblind are all apparently mental states. Being actually blind or deaf are not. Height, physical appearance, and posture are non-transferable bodily states. But strength, speed, and dexterity are a mix, with both physical and mental components being anywhere from 30 to 70% mental. To further test the specifics of his powers, we see Jimmy with two prostitutes. He has them lie down on two couches placed at precise positions. Then on the other side of the wall behind them, he lies down between the two. He lies down with his body closer to one, but with his head closer to the other's head. When he shoots himself, he proves that he always possesses the person whose head is closest to his own. What's strange though is that his old body looks decapitated to him, but not to others. He can even feel the head as if it were still there, it's just invisible. Maybe it's related to the fact that when he looks in a mirror, he sees his own head on his host's body, but he can feel the facial features of the woman he's possessed, even though he sees his own face in the mirror. The next thing he wants to experiment with is whether he can leave his body in any way other than dying. We cut to Jimmy speaking with a Catholic priest about exorcism, but when accepting Jesus as his Lord and Savior doesn't do anything, he simply shoots himself and moves on. He also decides to read the entire dictionary out loud in English, Latin, and Arabic, just in case there's any kind of trigger word that lets him leave a host body. Jimmy moves on to trying to deduce what gave him his demon powers in the first place, but nothing really eventful has ever happened in his life. His powers probably aren't hereditary because his mom and dad are both dead, and his daughter died in a car crash. The driver's name was Heron Marsh. It was his third DUI in as many years. Jimmy was happy to learn that the accident left him crippled both physically and mentally, and even though he now has the mental abilities of a third grader, he was sentenced to 2 15-year sentences for vehicular manslaughter to be served consecutively. But Marsh didn't rot for his crimes. He had a wealthy uncle named Lee Marsh who used his funds to get Heron into a cushy, minimal security federal prison, Green Lake Correctional Facility. Amenities include cable TV, limited internet access, a gym, rec room, even a swimming pool. After the accident, Jimmy had tried to go back to his old life, but it wasn't the same. He couldn't take it anymore. He bought a rope, learned to tie a slip knot. His plan was to kill himself on what would have been his daughter's 10th birthday. But the night before, he got an idea. He decided he was going to kill Heron Marsh. He would rob a bank, get arrested, and get himself sent to Green Lake Prison. So he robbed the Bank of Oakland with nothing but a piece of paper. Not even a gun. Just a note he passed to the teller telling him to empty the register or something. But the plan went south. The teller hit an alarm. A security guard fired at Jimmy. He missed and killed the teller. Jimmy didn't shoot anyone, but because of the teller, Jimmy knew he'd be charged with murder. There was no way he would get sent to Green Lake. He would be sentenced to 20 to life in state prison. No cushy federal prison for him. So Jimmy killed himself. But now he's been given a second chance to avenge his family's deaths. He'll find his way into Green Lake, kill Marsh, and then disappear again before Hunter and his men can find him. We see Jimmy is in Lee Marsh's body, Heron's uncle, and he's heading right for Green Lake Prison. He's coming for Heron Marsh. In Lee Marsh's body, Jimmy is able to get into the prison. He's just a loving uncle visiting his nephew, after all. He won't have a gun or any weapon, and Marsh will be behind 3 inches of glass, but his possession power can cross any barrier. Jimmy looks up at a security camera. On the other side of that camera are Hunter and his men watching him. Hunter guesses that Jimmy has already injected himself with a slow-acting poison, timed to kill him right when he's face-to-face with Marsh. Hunter says they're not going to stop him. They're going to let the possession take place. Every other person in the prison waiting room is working for them. The prisoners, the other visitors, even the guards. As soon as Jimmy makes the possession, agents will shoot him with tranq darts and they'll capture him. Jimmy is seated and waits for Marsh to walk in. But instead of Marsh, in walks Sweet Pea, Jimmy's daughter. Sweet Pea is alive. Hunter puts it together. Demonism must be hereditary. When Sweet Pea died, she possessed the person nearest to her, Marsh. That's why he had the mental capacity of a 3rd grader after the accident. Hunter orders his men to capture Lee and Heron Marsh. Sweet Pea calls for Jimmy to watch out, but he gets tased. Hunter warns his men that Jimmy probably injected himself with poison, but too late. A moment later, Jimmy dies and possesses one of the guards. Another guard shoots him in the leg. Jimmy's bleeding on the ground. He tranks the guard standing over him and takes his gun. He tries to shoot the prisoner holding Sweet Pea, but there's bulletproof glass between them. The prisoner tranks Sweet Pea and then tells Jimmy to suck it. So Jimmy shoots himself, possesses a guard on the other side of the glass, and shoots the guy. There's a shootout, and Jimmy gets shot in the arm with a tranq dart. So he shoots himself in the arm over and over until his arm is blown off so he doesn't get tranked. Jimmy shoots at the other prisoner, but he's covering behind a door. So Jimmy shoots Sweet Pea to make her possess him. Jimmy rushes to Sweet Pea's side. He wakes her up and tells her to stay where she is. She protests, but then he tranks her again. Why did you wake her up then, bro? Hunter comes into the room on the other side of the glass. Jimmy points his gun at his own head to threaten him, because this is a story where you can threaten someone else by pointing a gun at your own head, but Hunter tells him he probably doesn't want to do that unless he wants to possess Agent Graham, who Jimmy tranked earlier and is lying on the floor in front of Hunter. Hunter tells Jimmy he's got 200 SWATs armed with tranq guns outside the door. Jimmy looks and yep, there sure are 200 SWATs out there, all aiming at the door. Hunter tells Jimmy he wants him to meet someone and brings in Agent Denny, the man with the eye patch and Hunter's second in command. Don't know if you saw, but there's about 200 SWATs on the other side of this door too, Denny says. Denny tells Jimmy he knows what he's thinking. He's wondering if a demon can possess another demon. The answer is no. If Jimmy stays in the room with his daughter and doesn't get his wound dealt with, then in a few minutes he'll die for good. If the OSS are to be trusted, that means a demon can be killed if the person nearest to them is also a demon. Then no possession is made and the demon dies permanently. Denny says the only way Jimmy gets out of here alive is if he picks up a tranq gun and shoots himself in the neck. The next page gives us an overhead view of the situation with every living person in the 2 rooms labeled. Hunter and Denny are on one side with Graham on the floor in front of them. On the other side of the glass are Jimmy and Sweet Pea. Surrounding the room are SWATs. How the heck is Jimmy gonna get out of this one, and with his daughter to worry about on top of everything else? Jimmy tells them they win. He throws his pistol and shoots a tranq dart into his neck, falling to the ground. But what's this? Actually, no, Jimmy says. F you, you don't win. Not 1 ounce of this tranquilizer got into my bloodstream. I aimed straight for the subclavian artery, mother effers. That leads directly out of the gaping hole where my arm was once attached. Ha ha ha. Freaking insane genius. Hunter and Denny saw Jimmy fall on the left side of the counter, so they keep Graham in between them and Jimmy. Meanwhile, some SWATs are hurrying to their location with a death row inmate to move Jimmy into. Hunter tells Denny to clear the room and keep an eye on Graham, and to load him full of tranks if he so much as twitches. Then Jimmy pops up on the right side of the room, having crawled under the counter. He shoots himself in the head and possesses Denny, then immediately tranks Hunter. Hunter's tech guy, Tibbs, watched this all happen over the security cameras. He warns Jimmy over intercom that he's totally surrounded, but Jimmy just shoots the security camera. The SWATs kick open the door and tell Jimmy to put down the gun. So he holsters it and asks them what took them so long. He's in Agent Denny's body after all. He tells the SWATs that Jimmy is possessing Hunter tranked on the floor. Tibbs tries to warn them that Jimmy is possessing Denny, but he intercepts the call. He takes the SWAT's phone and talks to Tibbs as he walks out of the prison. I just walked into your little trap, unarmed, killed 4 of your agents, Hunter's second in command, and now I'll be walking out the front door. Jimmy says to tell Hunter he's coming for him and for his daughter. Jimmy walks to the SWAT truck driver and shoots himself in front of him, possessing him. Tibbs steps up to the car with a tranq gun drawn, Jimmy pointing his own at his head. So Tibbs tranks himself. Fine, I'll just tell him myself, Jimmy says. He's escaped, but he had to leave Sweet Pea behind. But he has a plan to rescue her. Jimmy calls Sarah, the daughter of the first truck driver he possessed, when he still didn't know how his powers worked. He gives Sarah his condolences about her dad, says he was one of his oldest friends. Jimmy knows a federal agent would have come to Sarah's house, and he asks her to tell him everything the agent said. Sarah says his name was Agent Hunter, and that he told her that the man responsible for her father's death would try to contact her. Hunter intercepts the call. He's got Sweet Pea with him and she wants to talk to him, but Jimmy refuses. He knows that Hunter is just trying to get him to stay on the line so that they have time to track his location. Jimmy gives Hunter his demands. He wants Sweet Pea on a train the next day, and he gives a specific time and station he wants her to get off at. Otherwise, he will kill everyone in the agency, starting with Hunter. Jimmy hangs up and we see he's in some kind of big empty room. Hunter's men triangulate his position, but he's in a moving vehicle. They place his location as on the Bay Bridge, and Hunter tells his men to close the bridge and place death row inmates on the lower deck of the bridge every 244 feet. A truck drives along the bridge. Inside the cargo container, Jimmy holds a steering wheel with a pistol attached to it. He lies down in a chair and shoots himself, possessing a driver while he's driving. Not only that, but he possessed a car driver on the lower level of the bridge driving the opposite direction. Jimmy drives away, coming for Sweet Pea. Later, Jimmy sits watching a distant bridge and talks aloud about killing Hunter. Hunter has done an excellent job of hiding his identity. Even the highest level OSS directors only know of the program by the codename Project Azazel. On the plus side, Jimmy figures that makes less than 800 people who know of his existence. I won't even need to kill all 800, he says. Probably only 50 or so well-positioned people. But first, he needs to get his daughter back. A train speeds along. On board is Sweet Pea. Sitting next to her is Tibbs. Sweet Pea calls him Uncle Tibbs and asks him why everyone on the train is wearing the same watch. Tibbs is honest with her and tells her that everyone on the train actually works for his company. He has a watch too. Sweet Pea asks if this is the same company he wants her dad to work for. Tibbs asks her if she's excited to see him, and of course she is. Tibbs says they're planning on meeting him at the station Jimmy said in his demands, 20 minutes away, but that he thinks Jimmy might try and show up sooner. Tibbs says he has to go and make a call, but before he leaves, Sweet Pea asks him what the watches are for. He says he needs to enter a secret PIN number into it every 40 seconds, or else a needle will extend from the backing and inject 1.5 cc's of tranquilizer directly into his bloodstream. Pretty clever anti-demon protocol. At the train station, Hunter receives Tibbs' call. He says 85% of the people at the station are with the OSS, and the rest are being run through facial recognition software. Tibbs comes back to Sweet Pea with an ice cream and asks her to tell him more about her dad. She says he's smart and likes math, and she misses him. Jimmy answers a call from Hunter. He confirms that Sweet Pea is on the train. We see that Jimmy is sitting on an aquatic plane, landed in a river or a lake in front of the bridge, and there's a girl swimming in front of him. Jimmy tells Hunter he's on his way to the station, but he wants to confirm that Sweet Pea is on the train. Hunter transfers the call to Tibbs, who puts him on speaker. Jimmy tells his daughter that he'll see her soon. He tells her to look out the window and tell him what she sees. Sweet Pea describes the view outside and says that someone scratched an X into the window, an X that Jimmy put there himself. So he's confirmed Sweet Pea is in fact on the train and not on a lookalike train somewhere else. Hunter starts giving his men orders to trace Jimmy's phone and see if he scratched X's in any other windows, and to move Sweet Pea away from their seat. Tibbs takes Sweet Pea to the back of the train. Their train approaches a tunnel, Jimmy waiting at the bridge on the other side. The train enters the tunnel. They've lost their cell reception for the next 3 minutes until they get out the other side. If anything happens, they're on their own and won't be able to contact Hunter. Tibbs says it'd be all too easy for Jimmy to get on the train. All he'd have to do is lay on the tracks and he'd possess the conductor. What Jimmy wouldn't know is that their conductor is handcuffed to his seat and wearing a watch that will inject him with 1.5 cc's of tranquilizer 40 seconds later. In those 40 seconds, Jimmy would have to free himself, punch his way through 6 train cars filled with 200 of their men, each armed with an array of tranq darts, mace, and tasers. Then he'd need to grab Sweet Pea and punch his way back out again. But nothing happens. Jimmy doesn't show up. 3 minutes pass and they exit the tunnel. Tibbs gets a call from Hunter, who is manic. He tells Tibbs to get out of there now. The trace on Jimmy's phone came through 2 minutes earlier. They know he's not at the station. He's below the bridge. But it's too late. Jimmy bombs the train, destroying the bridge. The train falls toward the water below. The train is in free fall. Sweet Pea and Tibbs are thrown around the cabin. The train hits the water and Sweet Pea is impaled. She possesses another person on the train, then is crushed. She possesses someone else. She's sliced in half. Then she drowns. Jimmy watches through binoculars. A moment later, Sweet Pea is swimming in front of Jimmy, possessing the girl Jimmy had brought with him. Jimmy jumps into the water and swims to her. They have a beautiful, tearful reunion. Sweet Pea innocently asks where Uncle Tibbs and the train went, but Jimmy says he'll explain later. They get back on the plane and the pilot starts the engine. They fly away from the wreckage safely. Jimmy begins to explain things to Sweet Pea. He tells her that her mom died in that car crash that she survived. Sweet Pea is distraught, but Jimmy tells her there's more. Outside the window is the wreckage of the train and bridge. Sweet Pea asks what's going on, tears filling her eyes. Jimmy tells her she survived the train crash the same way she survived the car crash. She's a demon who possesses the body of the person nearest her when she dies. He tells her there are bad men chasing after them and that to escape they're going to have to jump out of this plane without a parachute. They're going to try to land on the roof of the Oakland Arena, where they'll then become random attendees in the stadium. Oh my gosh, that's awful. Then the two will meet up at Mosswood Park, where Jimmy first taught her how to catch. Sweet Pea protests that she still doesn't understand what's going on. A cargo plane and now 2 fighter jets are coming after their plane. Jimmy guesses the jets will fire on them and make them possess someone on the cargo plane. They have to change their plans. They've got to do something now instead of flying to Oakland Arena. So Jimmy shoots their pilot in the head, grabs Sweet Pea's hand, and heads for the door of the plane. And they jump out hand in hand into freefall. Behind them, the plane is destroyed by a fighter jet. Over the rush of air around them, Jimmy yells for Sweet Pea to remember where they'll meet back up. Mosswood Park, 7 p.m. Then Jimmy pushes away from Sweet Pea and pulls out his pistol. He unloads his clip into one of the fighter jets, then throws his pistol away. He dives down into the city below them, hitting the roof of a building with a splat. A moment later, he's possessed an office worker. Jimmy walks onto the baseball diamond at Mosswood Park. Sweet Pea isn't there. He hears someone call his name. It's Hunter, with Sweet Pea. He knew their meeting place from recovering the plane's black box. Jimmy aims a pistol at Hunter. He found another one, I guess. Hunter lets Sweet Pea go and she runs to Jimmy. Jimmy keeps his gun aimed at Hunter. Let me guess. Kathmandu, says Hunter. Jimmy took a trip there with his family when he was 10 years old. Hunter guesses that's where he's thinking he can lay low for 100 years or so. But Hunter tells him he's wrong. He throws a black briefcase on the ground between them. Hunter says it's a peace offer. Despite everything he's done, the OSS still wants Jimmy to work for them. Hunter says Jimmy will change his mind when he sees what's in the case. Listen, Jimmy, he says, no more bullcrap. I'm just an unarmed federal agent who's been authorized to make you a very generous offer on behalf of the US government. You can take it or leave it. But Jimmy says the only thing he wants in the world is his daughter, and Hunter already gave her to him. Jimmy pushes Sweet Pea away and shoots himself in the head. Sweet Pea screams, but Hunter isn't possessed. Hunter opens the briefcase. Inside is Jimmy in a tiny body. Do you have any idea how difficult it was finding a midget on death row? Hunter says. We had to extradite this effer from Thailand. Oh my gosh, this is so awful. I love it. Hunter punches Jimmy, throwing him to the ground. Welcome to the OSS, a-hole, he says. Jimmy wakes up in a bed with Sweet Pea playing on the floor nearby. She tells him that they're at Mr. Hunter's house. She's not hurt. In fact, it looks like Hunter provided her with plenty of toys and even a pet hamster. But the room is locked and they're trapped inside. They have to escape. Sweet Pea protests. She likes it here. Jimmy is struggling with 2 bracelets stuck on each of his wrists when the door unlocks and Hunter steps in. He's here to give Jimmy the tour. He tells Jimmy not to pull on the bracelets. If they receive more than 20 newtons of torsion, they'll send 400 volts of electricity through his body, followed by an injection of 1.5 cc's of tranquilizer. The bracelets also track acceleration. The same thing will happen if they accelerate faster than 12 meters per second. Hunter then helpfully informs Jimmy that the typical punch clocks in at around 20 meters per second. Hunter takes him to a lab where he says he can answer Jimmy's questions about his powers. Jimmy is introduced to a Dr. Herbert. Herbert shows Jimmy a rat in a maze looking for cheese. The rat has spent more than an hour looking and still hasn't found the cheese. Herbert removes the rat from the maze and puts it in the first of 2 cages. In the second cage is another rat with a plate covered in spikes above it. Herbert smashes the rat. He then takes the first rat back out of its cage and puts it back into the maze, where it immediately heads for and reaches the cheese. It's a demon rat. The rat that was killed had solved the maze previously, and when it died, it possessed the first rat. Herbert says they've rebuilt a machine called the Demonizer using Sweet Pea's blood. Rebuilt because there was an original Demonizer built in the 1940s by the OSS. Project Azazel was originally started by a scientist named Richard Gelman as a radical idea in warfare to use demons to win wars without firing a single bullet, dropping a single bomb, or killing one innocent civilian. Instead of assassinating their enemies, the US could simply possess them and make them puppets. With an army of 196 well-positioned demons, they could literally eliminate all the world's genocide and wars overnight. We also learn more about the mechanics of how demon possession works. Dr. Herbert asks Jimmy if he's familiar with the fourth dimension. It turns out that the fourth dimension is not time, that's the fifth dimension. Instead, the fourth dimension is another spatial dimension. Like if the universe was a piece of paper where one could move north, south, east, and west, then the fourth dimension would be moving up or down, away or into the paper. According to the OSS's research, a person's memories are not actually stored in their brains. Rather, they're stored in an organ called the flasticle, which rests above the brain in the fourth dimension. Normally, you don't have to worry about your flasticle drifting off. It's connected to your brain via the pineal gland. Even when a person dies, their flasticle usually just sits there and withers away. Demons, it turns out, have parasitic flasticles. When a demon dies, its flasticle finds the nearest one and takes its host body. From the point of view of an observer, it looks like a demon possession, but in fact, it's just the flasticle being passed from one host to another. The reason that Jimmy still sees his own face when looking in the mirror instead of his host's is because the flasticle also houses perceptual organs within it. When he looks in a mirror, he's seeing his own flasticle instead of his host's flasticle. But when he looks at a photograph of himself, he's just seeing ink printed on paper, so he sees his host's face. It took the scientists 7 years to figure this all out, and 5 years more after that to synthesize demon blood and build the machine that would blast it through the fourth dimension into a subject's flasticle. The Demonizer. Although they wanted the first human trial to be on a death row inmate, Gelman insisted that he be the first. It made sense, the project was his brainchild, but they should have known that Gelman couldn't have cared less about the project, the OSS, or his country. The minute he was demonized, Gelman walked to his locker and pulled out a duffel bag full of guns. Gelman proceeded to kill every scientist associated with the project and burn the lab to the ground. And he didn't stop there. He possessed every high-level official who knew about the program and destroyed every trace of it from the government record. The OSS eventually rebuilt the program and the Demonizer, but they couldn't figure out how to synthesize demon blood. That's why they needed blood from a natural-born demon like Jimmy or Sweet Pea. They couldn't use Gelman's blood because he was an artificial demon, and as soon as he made his first possession, any children he fathered wouldn't have been demons either. I think that this makes perfect sense since his first host body onward wouldn't have originally been a demon and wouldn't have his new demon genetics. But the comic actually gives us another explanation using parallel universes. Every time you make a possession, you're actually splitting the universe and yourself into a parallel one where you didn't. Turns out heritable genetic material pertaining to demonism is the one thing that doesn't split. Okay, I think my explanation makes more sense than that, but sure. But now, finally, the OSS have access to demon blood. They've already demonized rats, and the first human trials are only a few weeks away. After that, the world, Hunter says. But Jimmy is confused. That still doesn't explain how he became a demon in the first place. Gelman is your father, Hunter says. Nah, just kidding. Jimmy's father was born in 1951, 10 years after the first and only use of the Demonizer. The OSS is stumped on this too. They have no idea how Jimmy became a demon. It couldn't have been his mom because Jimmy was the one who found her body after her heart attack, and she still had her head when he saw her. If she'd been a demon, her body would have been headless, like his own corpses appear to himself. So his dad must have been a demon. It still doesn't explain how his dad became a demon though. When Jimmy's dad was on his deathbed, Jimmy was the one closest to him. Jimmy killed him by being the closest person to him, preventing a possession. It's the one and only way to kill a demon. Jimmy asks Hunter why they're sharing all this information with him. Hunter says it's because they want him on their side. If he agrees to work with them, Jimmy will receive full access to the lab and a full federal pardon. A pardon for what? Jimmy asks. For the 287 men, women, and children you've killed. Oh yeah. Hunter says they don't care about Jimmy's crimes because they've got bigger problems. The Sultan of North Sarawak, also a fictional country, is planning an attack on US soil in 1 week. They need Jimmy to stop him. Hunter describes the OSS's vision. We've already made demon rats and human trials are less than a week off. Once we've trained our demon army, the world will be ours for the remaking. Imagine a world with no Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot. No corruption, no political instability, no genocide. Imagine a world with no wars or conflicts. Every nation's military budget diverted to social and environmental programs and lower taxes. Imagine a utopia on Earth not in 1,000 years, but by late September. So Jimmy assassinates this sultan, or he's tried for 287 counts of murder and gets executed in front of his own daughter. He tells Hunter to tell him about this sultan. It's Gelman, Hunter says. For reals this time. Jimmy breaks the news to Sweet Pea. He'll be leaving her again. About to cry, she throws herself into his arms, and he promises he'll be back for her. Jimmy and Hunter walk down a hallway together. Though the two don't trust each other, the OSS needs Jimmy. They want to assassinate Gelman, and the only way to do so is with another demon. The human trials for the demonizer are too far away. Hunter tells Jimmy that on the 10-hour flight to Sarawak, he'll need to use his photographic memory to memorize the names and faces of 783 employees at Gelman's palace. Gelman's not a nice guy, Hunter says. He's killed 15,000 people. And he doesn't just kill for self-preservation or scientific discovery like Jimmy. He'll kill a girl just so he can ride her pony. While Hunter is talking about the threat Gelman poses, he's doing a biometric scan of his fingerprint, retinas, and then tongue. Awesome. Hunter and Jimmy walk into an airlock. Hunter gives his name and field number, and then the machine says it's generating 5 random questions from a database for him to answer. It then asks him insane questions like the digits of his social security number from largest to smallest, the breed of his childhood pet, and his driver's license number in reverse order. If he had gotten even one question wrong, it would have filled the whole room with knockout gas. But the process isn't over yet. A compartment opens up, and now Hunter has 45 seconds to solve a Rubik's Cube in a certain pattern. Then the door opens, they step into another room, and a voice says there are 26 airlocks left to go. Some indeterminate amount of time later, Hunter and Jimmy finish the exit protocol and are finally able to leave the building. Jimmy is introduced to Agent Poole, who'll be escorting him to North Sarawak. They drive to the airport with Jimmy in the trunk of the van so that he can't see where they are and learn the location of the Project Azazel base. He deduces that at this point, anyone who's ever heard of Project Azazel has been moved to the HQ to keep them from being possessed by Gelman. On the plane to Sarawak, Poole gives Jimmy a briefcase. Inside are cyanide pills, a pistol, photos of Gelman, and other things he'll need. Poole starts explaining the plan. The Sultan is throwing a party, and Jimmy will need to possess someone who's on the guest list. He goes into more details before realizing that one of the cyanide pills is missing. Then Jimmy dies and possesses him. Jimmy asks a flight attendant for a street map of Tacoma. She asks if his friend is okay. Nah, it's fine, don't worry about him. Jimmy traces something on the map for a moment, then he pulls the pistol out of the briefcase and starts walking to the front of the plane. He walks to the cockpit and bangs on the door. When the co-pilot steps to the door, Jimmy shoots himself. Possessing the co-pilot, who was also armed, Jimmy shoots the pilot. Then he sits down and turns the plane. The passengers aboard are thrown around the cabin as he banks. Whee! Jimmy is contacted by a nearby air traffic controller asking him to identify himself, but he ignores them. A phone rings. It's Hunter, who wants to know what the heck is going on. Jimmy tells him there's been a change of plans. Thanks to his photographic memory, he was able to keep track of their path to the airport and work backwards on the map he got from the flight attendant to find the Project Azazel headquarters. Jimmy is coming right for him. Hunter begins to sweat. He tells Jimmy there's an F-18 fighter jet after him, and even if his hijacked passenger plane isn't blown out of the sky, if he did crash into the HQ, he could very well kill either himself or Sweet Pea. Jimmy says he's not planning on flying into the building. He's going to fire a missile into it. Jimmy steps away from the controls. He goes to the plane's emergency exit and shoots and kicks it open. He gets sucked out into the sky, falling between the plane and the fighter jet. He waits, letting himself fall a bit before shooting himself in the head, possessing the fighter jet pilot. Whee! Jimmy tries to figure out how the jet's missiles work and ends up firing one into the passenger plane. Ah, there we go. Meanwhile, Hunter has realized he is absolutely boned. He rushes for the airlock, the HQ's only exit. Unfortunately, the exit process involves 27 very secure and unique airlocks full of security questions and Rubik's Cubes. Jimmy flies toward the HQ and fires a missile. There is a massive explosion. Hunter and his men are flung around the lab. The demonizer is crushed by debris. A girder falls on Hunter's head, crushing him. Sweet Pea is killed again and again and again. Jimmy ejects himself from the plane, parachuting down to the wreckage. He surveys the damage. The HQ has been obliterated, leveled. He calls for Sweet Pea. Finally, he finds her and they embrace. There's some cool attention to detail here. You can tell she's possessed an adult because she and Jimmy are the same height now, when before she came up to maybe his waist. Sweet Pea asks him what happened. Sweet, sweet victory, he tells her. Checkmate, he's won. The two go to a diner. Even though Jimmy probably killed everyone at the HQ, he says they should probably lay low for the next 80 years just to be safe. If there were any survivors, they can just outlive them. After 80 years, Jimmy will possess the President of the United States and meet with the head of the OSS to see what their status is. If it's safe, they'll come out of hiding. Then they can really do anything they want. They can live their wildest dreams. And Jimmy says that he has, in fact, always dreamed of being an astronaut, exactly like Hunter said so long ago. Sweet Pea says she's always dreamed of playing for the Giants. Jimmy thinks eventually they'll live to see the end of humanity. Millions, maybe billions of years. Then one of them will die and the other one will go on to figure out if there's humans elsewhere in the universe. But right now, they need to ditch their current bodies. Jimmy tells Sweet Pea to stay here while he gets some cash and a car, but she immediately protests, saying she doesn't want to lose him again. But he promises her he'll be back in 5 minutes. We cut to later and Jimmy is walking into a coffee shop. He orders a soy chai latte and the barista tells him it'll be $87. Jimmy gives her a $100 bill. He walks out of the coffee shop and calls his daughter. Hey Sweet Pea, it's Daddy. Just calling to wish you a happy 100th birthday, he says. Behind him is a futuristic skyline. We next get to see a sort of montage of Jimmy's incredibly hedonistic lifestyle over the last 90 years. We see what looks like the Taj Mahal and Jimmy sitting on a throne surrounded by servants. I'm bored, he says. He leaves his servants and goes to take a nap. Some show or movie is playing on the massive TV screen in his royal chambers. He comments that the actress on screen is pretty cute. And on the next page, he's having sex with her. Next, Jimmy is paragliding. He glides over a circus, which piques his interest, so he lets go of his paraglider. He falls and possesses an elephant rider and drives the elephant out of the circus. We see a house on a hill with nothing for miles around it. Inside, Jimmy and Sweet Pea are sharing a meal together. Jimmy suggests that for Sweet Pea's birthday, they could try going to the Super Bowl. But he doesn't mean attend. It sounds like he means possess the coaches of the two teams and see who wins. Jimmy leads Sweet Pea to the basement, where 3 men are chained to the wall. They're the Baxter Boys, Sweet Pea's favorite band in the whole world. Only one of the band members, Lance, is missing. He kind of put up a fight, Jimmy says. He leaves Sweet Pea to the boys, threatening them with a pistol to keep her entertained for the rest of the day. Jimmy and Sweet Pea are driving a convertible through the city with skyscrapers and airships behind them. Sweet Pea regales her dad with how she had the band compose a song for her, then made them make out with each other. Sweet Pea asks if they can put the top up because she's freezing, but Jimmy refuses because the car is equipped with ejection seats to separate them as far as possible in the event of an accident, so that they can't die permanently from being too close to each other. Jimmy tells her he lost her mother and almost lost her too. He's not taking any more chances. It's funny to think, Jimmy says, but I'm older now than my dad ever was. His dad who died of a heart attack, who never got to meet Sweet Pea. But he was a demon. He never should have died. Jimmy told Hunter he was with him on his deathbed, but he lied. He was on a business trip in New York. So how did his dad die? Maybe there's another way to kill a demon. Sweet Pea asks if anything unusual happened before his death. The only weird thing was that 33 days before he died, his dad donated $500 to a homeless shelter. He was an incredibly stingy man, so it was probably the first time in his life he'd done anything remotely charitable. Sweet Pea points out that it sounds like he knew he was going to die, but there's no way he's actually still alive because Jimmy saw his face in the casket. When a demon makes a possession, they leave their previous host headless. There must be some other way to kill a demon, but Jimmy's not smart enough to figure it out, but he knows who is. We see Jimmy taking a photo of a huge message written out in lumpy lettering on a hillside. Gelman, let's chat. Project name @Zphone. Or @2phone. He sends a picture of it to Sweet Pea and she says she can't tell if it's Zphone or 2phone, so Jimmy goes to straighten out the letter. And when he does, we see that the message is written with dozens of dead bodies. Sweet Pea asks him if he really had to use someone named Prince Andrew for the exclamation mark. She liked him. Jimmy said everyone liked him, that's why he used him. Using celebrities' corpses to write his message pays off though, because he receives a message that he thinks is from Gelman. Sweet Pea tells him to be careful. What if it's an OSS agent trying to capture him? But the OSS hasn't existed for 75 years. Gelman is the only other person on the planet who knows what Project Azazel is. The only other person who knows to fill in project name with Azazel. We see Jimmy in a hot air balloon. He calls the number he received in Gelman's email, and Gelman picks up. Jimmy asks him to tell him something only Gelman would know. Gelman tells him that when he transfers bodies, Jimmy sees an illuminated ring against a pitch black void. It starts off as a point, quickly grows to the size of a thumbnail at arm's length before vanishing back into the void. We've seen this ring ourselves at the start of the comic when Jimmy made his first possessions. We haven't seen it since then, but we can assume that Jimmy sees it each and every possession. This white ring is also the O in the word demon on the cover of the novel. What is its significance? Jimmy asks Gelman how to synthesize demon blood. Gelman says it can't be done. Back in the 1940s, every drop of demon blood they used came from Gelman's partner. Project Azazel was her idea, but Gelman only saw her true form when he himself became a demon. She was an ancient demon by the name of Phaedra. She came to Earth 3,000 years ago from another world where demons were common. Phaedra had lived on Earth as some of the great religious and moral leaders of history, like Jesus Christ, it seems. Over the centuries, she worked to slowly push humanity to the point in its technological development where it could create another demon. Apparently, she was also Thomas Edison. When Gelman met her, he was studying the transmission of matter through the fourth dimension. Together, they formed the government's Project Azazel. You're probably wondering why Phaedra would even want other demons in the world, Gelman says, especially since it would leave her open to being killed. Well, I did kill her, so I guess we'll never know. Gelman says he wants to meet Jimmy in person. I know why you called. You want my knowledge. You want to know what that ring is. You want to know how to make duplicates. You want to know how to make a possession without physically killing yourself. Maybe you already figured out how, but you want to know why this method only works once, or why it takes exactly 33 days. 33 days. That was exactly the time between Jimmy's father's strange charitable donation and his death. We see Sweet Pea warning Jimmy that meeting Gelman in person is too risky. The man destroyed an entire branch of the OSS. But Jimmy reminds her that he did the same thing. Besides, now he thinks Gelman might just be lonely. Jimmy puts on a Kevlar vest, but what if Gelman's rigged the entire meeting place to explode? Kevlar won't save him. But Jimmy says that Gelman's so smart that he would have found them eventually anyway. This confrontation always had to happen. Jimmy tells Sweet Pea to stay away from their house until he gives her a signal. In a few days, he'll put a classified ad in the New York Times for 1,000 red roses. That will be the signal that everything's okay. The 5th word in the ad will be my email username. The 7th word backwards will be my password. Log into my account and let me know you're okay, but instead of sending the message, save it as a draft. Hope you don't have two-factor authentication enabled, Jimmy. Jimmy gives Sweet Pea 12 Greyhound tickets and tells her not to tell him which one she'll use to leave and hide. Sweet Pea's eyes fill with tears. She's not 10 years old anymore. She's lived as a demon for 90 years now, but she's still worried about losing her dad, her only family. Gelman sits at an outdoor cafe. A phone on the next table rings and he picks up. It's Jimmy. He tells him there's a package waiting for him at the post office in Oakland containing 23 cell phones. Jimmy will call him on one of them, but Gelman's not in Oakland. So Jimmy tells him to head for the airport and get there. Gelman does what he says. He goes to the post office. Jimmy has possessed one of the post office workers. Gelman rushes to him. Jimmy tells him to step back, but Gelman ignores him. I can't believe it. Another demon, he says. After 217 years, it can finally end. Then Gelman shoots himself in the head. Jimmy tells Sweet Pea what happened as they walk through what looks like a bustling Japanese street. Sweet Pea asks him why he's bringing up something that happened over 100 years ago. Jimmy says he's been alive for 250 years now. He doesn't feel exactly like Gelman did, but he sees his point. It's a lot of existence to get through. And for what? But Sweet Pea brushes him off and says if he's lacking meaning in his life, he probably just needs a new car. But Jimmy already has 37. Sweet Pea asks him what his problem is. If there's something missing in your life, then take it, she says. Unless it's not a thing that he feels he's missing. They bring up Jimmy's most recent marriage of who knows how many. It went well for the first 20 years. Then Jimmy's wife got all wrinkly and gross. Man, these two just have no concept of old age. Which makes sense. Why would they ever let themselves grow old? It's amazing that Jimmy held a marriage for 20 years without making a possession. Sweet Pea says he should forget it and just eat more $1,700 sushi, which, if that $87 latte 100 years ago was any indication, is probably pretty cheap. But Jimmy says he just doesn't see the point of it all. And Sweet Pea genuinely seems upset with him. Tough crap, she says. This is it. You and me wandering around one pleasure district or another for the next 700,000 years. Where Jimmy is down and questioning the purpose of this endless existence, Sweet Pea is jaded and accepting of their reality. It's interesting. She still looks like a 10-year-old girl, but she has lived for more than 200 years at this point. Sweet Pea says she has just the thing to get him out of his funk. Cocaine! Jimmy snorts some right then and there. This is better than that batch we got in 2097. He says it's working and he feels better. So we go right back to Jimmy's hedonism. He steps out of a limousine full of women and onto a red carpet. He grabs a money cannon and starts firing it into the crowd, and then into a guy's face. As the man lays bleeding on the ground, he asks Jimmy why he would do such a thing. "Because I can," Jimmy says. He looks up at the crescent moon in the sky. On the next page, Jimmy is on the moon, descending from a lunar lander. He hops in a buggy and spells out "F-U" on the moon's surface in huge cursive letters. Then he's riding a whale. Then he's having sex with a camel. And then firing himself out of a cannon. He's single-handedly filling out the entire Wikipedia page on unusual deaths. In a beautiful mansion, Jimmy lies in bed with a woman. She calls him Chip and asks him to do something for her. He doesn't even call her by name. She asks him to have a talk with her son Billy about the facts of life. And it seems like he's actually going to. We see Billy playing with toys in his room when Jimmy comes in. Jimmy tells him to enjoy the happiness his toys bring him while he can. He doesn't realize it yet, but his toy is a piece of crap. It's a cheap hunk of plastic with some fur glued to it. One day the boy will find better toys in life, like Jimmy's car. The Aston Martin Zagato Coupe, the fastest street-legal car on the market. Those kinds of fancy toys will give his life meaning and make him happy for a few months, even a year if you're lucky, but at the end of the day, it's just another thing. And it's all just things, isn't it? Every material thing is just crap. "What about that rainbow?" Billy asks him. He points out a window. "Screw that rainbow. There's a million rainbows in this world. I've seen more double rainbows than most people have seen any. I saw a triple effing rainbow off the peaks of Kilimanjaro. Now that's a rainbow." Jimmy says that maybe life is about finding beauty in the world, but once you find it, then what? What else is there to give any kind of meaning to existence? "What about Disneyland?" Billy suggests. Jimmy gives him credit for that. "What about experiences, travel, art, technology?" All crap. Disneyland is one giant fake commercial for more crap. Travel is crap. All the crap they have here, they have over there, even more so. The world's a crappy place. Literature is crap. It's cool when it's written by people who have seen and done things you haven't, but what if one day you're more experienced than any writer who's ever lived? Movies are crap too. One day you'll know everything about every subject, then what's the point? Music is crap. It's all the same. I guess Jimmy's never heard real music before. Hedonic pleasures, food, sex. Food with sex, crap with crap. For Billy, his best meals are ahead of him, but one day they'll all be behind him. You live long enough and you really get to see what's common and rare in this world. Thing is, it's all common. It's all crap. One effing day after another. Every day, day in and day out, eating, drinking, and breathing crap. The entire world closing in on you, suffocating you with crap. Just one unending avalanche of crappiness piling on top of you until the day you die. Except Jimmy doesn't say crap, he says a bad word. Billy's mom walks in. She looks upset. But love, Jimmy says. Love is the one thing. Then he stops and thinks. He says, no, love's crap too. The woman says when she said the facts of life, she wanted him to talk to Billy about sex. So Jimmy very bluntly does. We see a massive modernist mansion. Inside, Jimmy sits on the edge of his bed. He's staring at something in his bedside table. A pistol. He picks it up and walks down the hall, past what looks like a jail cell with someone sleeping inside. Jimmy walks into the next room, Sweet Pea's room. That's actually pretty brilliant. They have a prisoner between where they each sleep, just in case they somehow die in their sleep. Jimmy sits in front of Sweet Pea, sleeping peacefully. Knowing these guys, that's probably the original Starry Night on her wall. Jimmy looks at Sweet Pea. He looks at the gun in his hand. He looks back at her, sleeping so peacefully. All it would take is one shot, and his suffering would be over. I can't do it, he says. He walks to the bathroom and looks at himself in the mirror. Then he puts his head in his hands. He reaches in his pocket for the cocaine Sweet Pea gave him, but there's barely any left but residue. Later, Jimmy stands before a massive skyscraper. Sweet Pea calls him. He's at the address of the supplier who got Sweet Pea that cocaine. He says he's going to start with 7 kilos and asks if Sweet Pea wants any, but she says she's good. Sweet Pea's worried. That cocaine was super pure, like 99.44% pure. But Jimmy says it's not like he could develop an addiction. That doesn't transfer from body to body. Sweet Pea tells him to just be careful. Jimmy asks the receptionist for Gregory Yeager and he's directed to an elevator. He rides past hundreds and hundreds of floors. While he rides, Jimmy thinks, Sweet Pea was right, something doesn't add up. Why would someone even make cocaine that pure? There's massive diminishing returns on getting that last 5 to 10%. For the price they were selling it, they could have just cut it with tetracaine and made twice as much. The elevator stops at the 875th floor. The doors open. It's Hunter. "Hello, old friend," he says. Then Hunter rushes him. We cut back to the day Jimmy destroyed the Project Azazel headquarters. Hunter is rushing for the exit. We see Jimmy's jet approaching. Hunter is entering the first of 27 airlocks. Then Hunter bolts in the opposite direction, to the demonizer. Dr. Herbert tells him it's not safe to use, so Hunter shoots him in the chest. Hunter logs into the machine, but it says there's only enough demon blood to create a 4-dimensional demonizing radius of 5 centimeters. Hunter curses the inverse cube law. Just as Jimmy fires the missile, Hunter takes off the tip of the demonizer and shoves it into his eye. It can only demonize him if his flasticle is within 5 centimeters of the machine, so he shoves it into his brain. Then we cut back to Hunter decking Jimmy in the face 250 years later, knocking Jimmy to the ground. Jimmy scowls at him as Hunter fires a dart into his neck. But this isn't a tranq dart. All the panels turn black as Jimmy dies. Then there is a white circle on a black background. Jimmy makes a possession and comes to, tied up in restraints. Hunter wants Sweet Pea. Otherwise, he would have just killed Jimmy. He warns Hunter that in the past 240 years, he's been electrocuted, starved, fallen into a volcano, AIDS, eaten by coyotes, and hung from a noose braided from his own pubic hair. He can take whatever Hunter can dish out. Hunter pulls Jimmy's phone out of his corpse's pocket. With that, he can trace Sweet Pea's location. He'll send in a team and she'll be in captivity by tomorrow afternoon, which means he doesn't need Jimmy anymore. He aims a pistol at his head. Jimmy starts to laugh. Hunter asks him if he thinks his demonism will get him out of this one. Jimmy says, yes, it will. Then he adducts so hard he snaps the legs off the chair and roundhouse kicks Hunter's pistol out of his hands. Holy frick, what a callback! Almost 300 pages later. Physical strength is 30 to 70% mental, so at some point in the last 240 years, Jimmy worked out a ton, and he beat his childhood estimation of how long it would take him to master a roundhouse kick by 110 years. Jimmy runs and Hunter fires at him, but Jimmy makes it to the window and jumps through, shattering it. As he falls, Jimmy grabs a piece of glass and cuts his restraints. Hunter runs and jumps after him. Jimmy throws the chair he was tied to at Hunter, and then he somehow pushes off of air or off of the building he's falling past. I don't know, this definitely looks impossible. He freaking glides or something. Then Hunter uses his 2 pistols and shoots backwards to boost himself after Jimmy. So good. This comic is so good. Hunter's bullets break windows and shower broken glass on himself. Jimmy crashes into a window and dies instantly, possessing an office worker. Hunter shoots at him and Jimmy takes cover behind a printer. But then Hunter manages to possess someone on the floor below Jimmy and recover both his pistols. Jimmy runs as Hunter fires up through the floor at him. Jimmy jumps out another window as he calls Sweet Pea, but she doesn't pick up. He's literally leaving a message when Hunter, riding a filing cabinet, lands on top of him. Jimmy yells that it's Hunter, he's alive, and then Hunter shoots his phone. Hunter tries to shoot through the cabinet, but it's made of something too strong for his bullets to pierce. And after all this, they're still falling! Jimmy rips out a drawer from the filing cabinet and throws it in Hunter's face. Then they both splat into the roof of a building. And they possess a couple in the middle of having sex. This comic is so stupid. They immediately start fighting naked, and it's just so dumb. I'm gonna skip ahead and give you the cliff notes. At one point, Jimmy gets a certain liquid in his eyes. He tries to punch Hunter in the crotch, but Hunter possessed the woman, so that doesn't do anything. Jimmy manages to get the gun and kill Hunter, but he possesses the couple's baby in the next room, so Hunter rushes Jimmy in the body of a toddler with 2 knives. It's so stupid. Hunter gets the gun, so Jimmy leaps out the window. He falls into the traffic below, dying and possessing a driver. Hunter jumps after him and possesses a motorcyclist, still managing to keep his same pistol. So now it's a car chase. Jimmy starts a multiple car pileup, then drives his car off the edge of the freeway. He plummets into a huge web of futuristic roads suspended in the air. Hunter drives his motorcycle off the road after him. Jimmy tries to swerve swerve in midair, but that doesn't really work. His car hits another road and flips over in midair, crashing onto the road below. This causes another huge pileup. Jimmy possesses several car drivers back to back. A huge tanker truck hits the pileup, flipping over. Hunter smacks on top of it just before the truck explodes. A car screeches to a halt before reaching the pileup, and Jimmy and Hunter possess the mom and dad in the car with a teenage girl in the back seat. They immediately start beating each other up, and the girl, of course, freaks out. Jimmy tries to strangle Hunter with his seatbelt. Hunter manages to undo Jimmy's seatbelt and then slams on the gas. Jimmy reaches his finger for Hunter's seatbelt, but Hunter blocks him. The car crashes into a cement pillar. Jimmy goes flying through the windshield, and Hunter stays in the car. Jimmy lies bleeding on the ground when Hunter runs him over. He steps out of the car and looks at Jimmy's body. "No, it won't," he says, answering his own question from 50 pages earlier. Sweet Pea drives home and parks. She checks her cell phone. One missed call. It's Jimmy's message warning her that Hunter is alive. Then a tranq dart hits her in the neck. She collapses in the car, but before she passes out, she hits the seat ejection button. The chair launches her up into an overhanging tree branch. The impact kills her, and she possesses the sniper who shot her. She looks at her wrist. On it is the watch all OSS members wear, telling her she has 21 seconds to enter a pin to prevent herself from being injected with tranquilizer. Sweet Pea jumps through the window of the house. She rushes to the kitchen and grabs a cleaver and cuts her hand off at the wrist. An OSS agent comes through the broken window behind her. Sweet Pea hurls the cleaver at him. The agent pulls out a tranq gun, but Sweet Pea holds another knife to her own throat. 3 more agents appear out of nowhere, all aiming tranqs at her. She tells them to lower their weapons, threatening to kill herself. But then Hunter speaks from behind her. In her surprise, she's shot with a tranq. With that, Sweet Pea has been captured by the OSS. We see a massive pagoda-like building surrounded by huge stone walls. Outside the wall are men with what look like baseball bats. Sweet Pea wakes on a futon, Hunter standing over her. He tells her that she is in his fortress. Sweet Pea knows Hunter wants her blood, otherwise she'd already be dead. And if Hunter wants her blood, he must be building another demonizer, which means that Project Azazel is still in operation. Hunter tells her she's smart. She takes after her dad, but she got one thing wrong. They've already built the demonizer. Hunter points out a lab outside the fortress's walls. Sweet Pea asks if her dad is there, but Hunter says he doesn't know where he is. Last he saw, Jimmy jumped out of a skyscraper, but he's expecting Jimmy to come for Sweet Pea. He doesn't think he's dead. Hunter explains the fortress's defenses to Sweet Pea. The outer wall is lined with death row inmates chained to the wall. If Jimmy tries to get into the compound by killing himself on the far side of the wall, he'll just possess one of them. On top of that, every one of the prisoners have had glossectomies or the removal of the tongue. But say Jimmy did manage to kill himself and make another possession. The outer yard is patrolled by a cadre of one-legged baseball bat-wielding Navy SEALs. If Jimmy so much as stumbles on his prosthetic leg, they will be on him in 3 seconds, beating him into an unconscious pulp. But suppose Jimmy kills all 500 of them with his baseball bat and then kills himself. Behind the next 30-foot-high inner wall is the world's largest assemblage of conjoined twins. Then suppose he could kill his twin and make his way to the main tower. He'd still have to fight his way through 4 floors of demonized Israeli commandos while lugging around his dead twin brother. Death there would be permanent, surrounded by other demons. If Jimmy did all that and made it to Sweet Pea, he'd still have to get back out. One call from Hunter and his backup demon army surrounds the tower and blocks any attempted escape. Sweet Pea asks how large the demon army is, and Hunter says right now it's actually just one guy. He takes her to the lab and introduces her to Dr. Khan. Sweet Pea recognizes him as a demon from the tan line on his neck, meaning he's in a host body. Khan tells her about the demonizer. They can set the radius of the demonizer, but it grows by the inverse cube, meaning there are diminishing returns in demonizing radius per unit of blood they use. They can only fit so many men into that radius. Khan says he's working on a way to flip that ratio and stretch out the blood, but until then they're stuck at making 1 demon per day. In 8 months, that's almost 250. At least 60 for the lab, 25 in the tower, and 172 possessing state leaders around the world, Hunter says. Because yes, they're going to assassinate 172 democratically elected world leaders. Hunter gives Sweet Pea his reasoning. How many people were killed in the Arkansas River dispute last year? None. No one went to war over it, it was taken to court. How many people died in the last World War? The last world war? Sweet Pea says 100 million. Hunter says there's a few world wars every century or so, regularly happening for the past 300 years. What if world disputes could be taken to court instead of fought over in wars? What if the world was united under one empire? This seems to make Sweet Pea think. But she points out that an army of demons is only going to get him so far. After he assassinates the first 5 or 6 world leaders, the rest will be tipped off and know what's happening. That's why Hunter says they're not going to start with 5 or 6. They'll start with all of them. 172 possessions around the globe, all within 10 seconds of each other. They'll start off possessing cabinet members, relatives of Secret Service, and slowly work their way up the chain of command. After a few months, they'll all be in position. Then, at midnight on July 4th, they'll all make their possessions. Just like that, the Earth will be but one country and mankind its citizens. Sweet Pea asks Hunter how he knows none of these new demon leaders won't bomb him and try to take over the world themselves, but Hunter tells her he knows none of them will want to. Once again, like Gelman, he mentions the 33-day rule and making a possession without physically killing yourself, but he doesn't give any more information. After the transition to this idyllic global society, Hunter says he hopes Sweet Pea will stick around as a member of the new administration. He tells her there will always be a home for her here. Then he gives her a sandwich to eat because they're going to be taking a lot of her blood. Time passes. Spring comes and cherry blossoms bloom. Hunter comes into Sweet Pea's room. It's been over half a year since Sweet Pea was taken to the fortress, and the big day is coming soon. She says she wants to be here when it happens in a couple of months. Hunter says in a few months, Sweet Pea will be dead. Then he kicks her in the face, knocking her out. Sweet Pea wakes up bloody, tied up, and hanging upside down. Hunter tells her he knows what she's been doing. She's been posting to the San Francisco Giants message board. All her messages look totally normal and benign, but Hunter's mathematician found a code hidden inside them. Taking every 15th character spells a message, telling her dad that she's being held in the top floor of the Osaka Castle in Japan, with details about the compound and its security. Hunter muses that Sweet Pea probably wondered why her dad never responded. It's because her dad is dead. Hunter killed him half a year ago. Hunter places a barrel under Sweet Pea's bloody body. She's probably thinking about her escape, he says. But the thing is, to get out, she'd have to fight her way through 25 demon Israeli commandos. Then she'd have to knock out her conjoined twin brother and drag him to the next wall. Then she'd have to walk to the next wall with one leg. If she killed herself with her baseball bat, she would possess one of the prisoners on the wall. If she somehow killed herself there's no way she could make a possession across the wall. By then, an army of 1,000 demons would have surrounded her. And this is all assuming she gets out of her ropes before she's dropped into this vat of acid. The fortress's securities were never meant to keep Jimmy out. They were meant to keep Sweet Pea in. Oh no, Hunter says, this vat isn't filled with acid. He shoots her in the head. This vat's for holding your blood, he says. Hunter calls Dr. Khan and tells him they'll be making their last demons today. The next page is solid black. Then in the darkness is Jimmy's voice. He doesn't know where he is. He must be dead. But if anyone could find a way out of being dead, it'd be him. In fact, Jimmy reasons that he's probably the smartest person in the world. He does have a photographic memory and more than 200 years of knowledge, after all, and he's resourceful. Jimmy once escaped from a Turkish prison using a nickel and 3 inches of dental floss. There was also that improvised shiv from early in the story. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a nickel or any dental floss, or even a corporeal body. No senses, no brain. But that's not right. He's thinking right now, which means at the very least his flasticle still exists. His consciousness, his memories, they're all still intact. But that doesn't explain where he is. His flasticle must still be attached to his body. This leads him to deduce that he must be in some kind of enclosure. The panel where he makes this realization is enclosed itself. It's very clever. Is he in a coffin? Was there a quadriplegic in the trunk of the car when he died? That'd be possible if the girl in the back seat died as well. 3 months pass, and Jimmy is still in this abyss. There's nothing to do but think. So Jimmy thinks. He tries to figure out what happened to his dad. How did he become a demon in the first place? The only explanation he can come up with is that his dad was Gelman's son. The demonizer was the only way to make demons, and Gelman destroyed it in the lab that built it, so Gelman must have fathered a child before making his first possession. The only way for demonness to pass hereditarily is for the demon to have a child before making their first possession. But that would mean that the timeline Hunter told Jimmy was a lie, of Gelman being demonized and then immediately shooting up the lab. lab. There's also the question of how Jimmy's dad died. In the days leading to his death, it was almost like he knew he was going to die. He made that donation to the homeless shelter, but he also did other small acts of kindness, like offering an old lady a seat on the bus, stopping for a pedestrian, tipping a waitress. 1 month later, he died of a heart attack in his sleep. Jimmy was on a business trip in New York at the time. The only way to kill a demon is in proximity to another demon, but they were on opposite ends of the continent. Jimmy's wife was the only other person in the house at the time, and Sweet Pea wasn't born until the following year. It must have been that the nearest person to Jimmy's dad was Sweet Pea, but when her mom was just barely pregnant with her. That means that fetuses can be demons. The girl in the backseat of the car when Jimmy died, if she'd been pregnant, it's possible Jimmy could have possessed her unborn child. Hunter presumed Jimmy was dead even though he couldn't see his head because there was an entire car tire on top of where his head should have been anyway. But that wasn't just because his head was crushed, it was also because he'd managed to barely make a possession. Hunter would see Jimmy without a head either way, and from Jimmy's point of view, he would be trapped in total darkness for months on end. You may see where this is going. Several months later, we see the girl giving birth. And I'm not going to show it because it's really graphic, but let's just say that Jimmy's host is born. Luckily, the story doesn't show us Jimmy finding a way to kill himself as an infant. We just skip ahead to Jimmy in a normal host body again. Thank goodness. Jimmy places a classified ad in the New York Times for 12 roses. Then, on a computer in a public library, Jimmy writes a message to Sweet Pea in an email and saves the email as a draft, just like they agreed. Then he waits. The story rewinds to show us Sweet Pea's perspective 7 months earlier when Hunter and Jimmy had their fight and Jimmy was presumably killed. Sweet Pea is on a beach somewhere when she gets Jimmy's short message warning her that Hunter is back. Shoot. She has to think. She can only assume that Hunter has captured her dad. If she ever wants to see him again, she'll need to get captured herself. There's only one way of breaking him out, and that's from the outside. But there's only one way of knowing where he is in the first place, and that's from the inside. If only there was some way. We see flashbacks. Gelman talking to Jimmy about what the ring demons see when they die means. Dr. Herbert from the OSS talking about demons' flasticles taking over others' bodies. Jimmy talking about how when a demon makes a possession, the universe splits off into a parallel universe where they didn't. Then we see the ring. But it's not a full circle this time. 73 years ago, Jimmy and Sweet Pea are sitting and talking about the ring. Jimmy says he spent a weekend killing himself hundreds of times trying to figure out what it is. Jimmy asks Sweet Pea to describe the ring. She says it's flesh-colored. It starts off as a point, grows to a ring twice the size of the moon, then shrinks back down to a point. Also, it's not uniformly solid. Some parts look brighter than others, and the patterns of brightness are different when she makes a possession in Hawaii. Jimmy asks Sweet Pea if she's ever made a possession from outer space. The ring looks smaller the farther away from Earth you are. Sweet Pea thinks about this and then makes a realization. It's the Earth. The rings are just cross-sections of the Earth. They're viewing it from the fourth dimension. All they see are the 10 billion flasticles, which are unevenly distributed across the surface. But, Jimmy points out, if the ring is the Earth, shouldn't it look much bigger? Sweet Pea thinks over more flashbacks. The image of the ring, the traits of the flasticle, an organ which rests above the brain in the fourth dimension. The flasticle has perceptual organs within it. Jimmy having sex with a camel. Gelman mentioning making duplicates. Wait, what was that last one? Sweet Pea has it. The ring is a parallel Earth. Judging from the size of the afterimage, she gauges its distance to 300,000 kilometers from our own Earth, perpendicular in the fourth dimension. This parallel Earth is identical to her own, but her most recent possession did not occur in it, meaning if she were to possess an astronaut, travel 400,000 kilometers away from the Earth and the nearest human, then kill herself, she would possess the astronaut in the next Earth over, an astronaut who was living in a reality where they were never possessed by Sweet Pea. This way, she could then return to Earth, and there would be 2 Sweet Peas on this Earth. And she realizes that her dad's camel bestiality actually ended up being irrelevant. Okay, so assuming I'm understanding this right, when a demon makes a possession, they create a parallel universe where that possession did not occur. However, their unpossessed victim in this parallel world would then do everything exactly as their possessed self did in the alternate world. Like, the victim would still also travel 400,000 kilometers away from the Earth just of their own volition? Or maybe this just means that the rocket ship would have been traveling that way already before Sweet Pea made a possession? It's a little muddy, but the important takeaway is this. It's theoretically possible for a demon to make a duplicate of themselves by traveling really far from the Earth and then possessing into a parallel universe. Don't think about it too hard. We then see Sweet Pea do exactly this. She hops out of a spaceship without a helmet on. She dies. She sees the ring, but it's extraordinarily small this time. Then she returns back to Earth. It worked. The next panel shows two Sweet Peas discussing their plan. One of them will get captured, then use the San Francisco Giants message board to send information to the other. We fast forward back to where we were. Sweet Pea gets captured and is eventually killed by Hunter. This means that this panel before of Sweet Pea checking her phone just before being captured and seeing she had a missed call was a trick from the author. We cut back to Jimmy sitting alone in the public library. Sweet Pea got his message. They're reunited. They're okay. So that's it. They won. Hunter thinks they're both dead. And honestly, Sweet Pea says, this new world Hunter's creating doesn't sound that terrible. A universal totalitarian regime isn't so bad when you're rich, and Sweet Pea and Jimmy will always be rich. Sweet Pea asks Jimmy if he remembers when she was 16 and they took a trip to Paris. There was a creperie there she loved. She hears it's still in business all these centuries later. They can start there, she says. Make a new life for themselves. Hunter will never find them. He won't even know to look. And they do. We see Jimmy and Sweet Pea's peaceful life together in Paris. Jimmy calls Sweet Pea and asks her if she wants him to pick her up a magazine. Sweet Pea is quiet. Listen, I'm sorry that creperie wasn't as good as you remember, Jimmy says. But Sweet Pea says it's okay. Jimmy tells her he lives to make her happy and he's sorry he can't offer her the world anymore. The world isn't enough anymore for them. We see their peaceful life in Paris. Jimmy eats at a fancy restaurant. He walks the streets. There's several pages of quiet introspection and beautiful city vistas. Jimmy walks past a woman breastfeeding on a bench. He stops and looks at her. He apologizes. Sorry, just wondering what that would taste like. Then he starts to pull a pistol out of his jacket, presumably to kill himself and possess her child. He stops himself. Finally, even he is horrified at his own depravity. When is this gonna stop, he says. Jimmy walks to a hotel door and knocks. Sweet Pea opens the door. I'm going to Osaka and I want you to join me, he says. It's a suicide mission, I know, but we've still got a month until July. If we start planning now, we can mount an assault on the compound before the coup and shut down the program once and for all. Sweet Pea looks at him. I thought you'd never ask, she says. And for the first time in a long time, they both look excited and full of life. Jimmy and Sweet Pea are sitting on the floor looking at a map of Hunter's fortress. Based on the posts on the San Francisco Giants board, Hunter's scientists figured out how to stretch the demon blood weeks ago. We see a map of the castle and the lab outside its walls. With the last of Sweet Pea's twins' blood, Hunter could have created a demonizing radius large enough to cover the whole lab. There could be 1,000 demons in there, she guesses. Sweet Pea and Jimmy start going over the castle's defenses. First is the 2-story high, 10-foot thick stone wall, topped with electrified barbed wire. On the other side of the wall are prisoners spaced every 10 feet. What if Jimmy dug a 3-foot hole, stuck his head inside, and then killed himself? Since the prisoners' heads are so high up off the ground, he could possess a guard instead. But the guard would have to be standing in exactly the right spot, and even if it worked, he'd end up possessing an amputee armed with only a baseball bat. If he so much as tripped on his peg leg, the other guards would beat him unconscious and capture him. But suppose he gets through all 500 of the Navy SEAL amputee guards. Then Jimmy would have to find a way to kill himself with only a baseball bat to possess his way through the next wall. He says he could figure out a way to do that with practice. But suppose he did. Then he would possess a conjoined twin. Hopefully they could find a way for both Sweet Pea and Jimmy to get to this point and possess the same pair of twins. And then they'd need to knock down a 5-ton iron door and kill the 25 demon Israeli commandos to get to Hunter. That's a lot. Sweet Pea suggests maybe just possessing the president of Iran and launching a missile at the castle. But Jimmy reminds her the castle has 7 EMP shields and that there's 172 demon field agents stationed all over the world ready for the takeover plan. The only way to stop them is to capture Hunter and force him to abort the coup. But how could they coerce Hunter? They couldn't threaten him at gunpoint. He'd rather die than stop his plan. And he doesn't have any loved ones they could threaten. They're up against 500 Navy SEALs, 200 pairs of conjoined twins, 25 demon Israeli commandos, a 1,000 demon backup army, 172 field agents scattered across every nation on Earth, and a man so ideologically driven he'd rather die than abort his plan to take over the world. All they've got is themselves and 1 month to prepare. So they start training, boxing, practicing walking on peg legs, pistol shooting. We also see Jimmy and Sweet Pea visiting the Baltimore 17th Annual Amputee Convention, but all the attendees are dead. I think because Jimmy and Sweet Pea were practicing beating them to death with baseball bats. They practice walking in the body of conjoined twins and end up falling over. Also, Jimmy beating himself in the face with a baseball bat to try and kill himself. As the weeks go by, they get better and better. Better with guns, better at fighting, better at beating amputees to death with baseball bats. Sweet Pea is running on a peg leg. She's even jumping and impaling someone in the face with her peg leg. Jimmy practices running and positioning positioning a baseball bat in his mouth so that when he falls on it, it smashes through his entire head and kills him. Good job. They get better at running in the body of conjoined twins. They're ready. It's July 1st. They have 3 days. Now it's time to gather duplicates. The International Space Station isn't far enough from the Earth to use, but there is enough fuel on the Geostationary Science Lab to get 400,000 kilometers from the Earth. Throw in the moon mining colony, which exists now, 250 years in the future, and that brings the total up to 287 possible people living in space for their duplicates to possess. It's not enough. Hunter has an army of at least 1,000 demons, but 287 is all they've got. We see Jimmy and Sweet Pea on the moon in the mining colony. Jimmy tells Sweet Pea that she can back out if she wants to. After this, there's no turning back, but she says she'd follow him anywhere. They get an emergency broadcast from Earth. It's Hunter. He knows they're coming. Jimmy says they're coming with everything they have. F you, Hunter says. Then 4 panels of nothing happening. Then finally Hunter gets Jimmy's F you in response. Takes a long time for signals to get to the moon and back. They have to evacuate the colony now. They need to get everyone to the ships. Everyone being dozens and dozens of duplicates of Jimmy and Sweet Pea. Hunter's castle stands, foreboding. Inside are prisoners chained to walls, Navy SEALs with peg legs and baseball bats, a crowd of conjoined twins. Past them are men in black, the demonized Israeli commandos. Sitting at the top of the castle is Hunter. He's sitting at a desk with a computer and a red phone. Jimmy and Sweet Pea, dozens of Jimmies and Sweet Peas, are racing toward the castle walls in trucks. Dozens of trucks with dozens of duplicates riding each. A missile is launched from the castle wall, destroying a truck. Then another. They drive in zigzags to dodge the rockets. Then they launch the catapults, launching Jimmies and Sweet Peas at the wall. Bodies go flying. One Jimmy duplicate manages to die and possess one of the guards on the wall, armed with a rocket launcher. He fires it at the next guard tower over. The other duplicates still in the trucks head for the parts of the wall that are now undefended. They catapult more duplicates clear over the wall and into the clearing guarded by the amputee Navy SEALs. As they fall, the Jimmies and Sweet Peas pull out pistols. They fire on the guards in mid-air. When they hit the ground and are killed, they possess the guards. They fight off guards with their baseball bats and fallen pistols. One Sweet Pea is beaten to death by the guards, but she just possesses one of them. Jimmy throws a pistol to Sweet Pea, but one of the guards catches it. So Jimmy shoots Sweet Pea herself. Then suddenly she's possessed the guard and has the pistol. Nice. Dozens of Jimmies and Sweet Peas lay waste to the Navy SEALs. One Jimmy shoots the prisoners chained to the wall so that other duplicates are able to just drive their trucks straight into the wall, die, and possess Navy SEAL guards instead of the prisoners. Jimmy and Sweet Pea coordinate, or one Jimmy and one Sweet Pea. They've only got 90 more minutes before midnight GMT when the global coup is to happen. Jimmy runs for the next wall. He throws one pistol over the wall, then shoots himself with the other. He possesses a conjoined twin. He and his twin immediately start trying to beat each other up. A moment later, Sweet Pea possesses his twin. They would have had to be really precise with their positioning to pull that one off. Yeah, okay. Jimmy and Sweet Pea, conjoined together, kill all the other conjoined twins. Then they throw all the corpses into a big pile. On the other side of the wall, duplicates have been doing the same thing with the corpses of the Navy SEALs. The duplicates are able to just climb the pile of bodies to get onto the wall, then hop down and land softly on the pile of dead conjoined twins. We get a zoomed out overhead view of the absolute carnage going on. Hunter watches from his balcony, but he's got a plan. He taps his cell phone and asks Siri to ready the mustard gas, the backup demon army, the napalm, the Ebola, the boiling pitch, the baboons, the cannons, the tritium bomb, and prepare to unleash on his command. It's 250 years in the future. Siri can do all of that now. I own a Siri for home defense. Outside the tower, the army of Jimmy and Sweet Pea duplicates use a battering ram to blow open the tower's gate. Waiting for them inside are a bunch of guards with Gatling guns. Dozens of duplicates are slaughtered outside the gate. The rest take cover on either side. Then they start jumping in front of the gate and getting annihilated by guns, but trying to get a lucky shot or two off before they die. Eventually, they've built a wall of bodies 5 deep for others to take cover behind and shoot over. Hunter tells Siri to ready the boiling pitch. It pours down over the gate onto the duplicates, burning and killing them. Hunter wants to clear a radius around the tower. Siri tries to warn him that he would kill his own men, the Gatling guards, in the process, but with a crazed look in his eye, he says, "Screw them, I've got 1,000 more demons in the lab." A few moments later, a cloud of mustard gas blasts out of the gate. Hunter really does not care at all about his own men. All the guards with Gatling guns are just dead now. Jimmy and Sweet Pea run through the gas and they manage to make it into the tower. Hunter is waiting for them with a gas mask and shoots at them. They run from Hunter and jump through a window and start climbing up the peaked roofs of the fortress. They're holding the roof of the fortress now when suddenly Hunter is there. He grabs Sweet Pea and holds a sword to her throat. Deadly gas fills the air. Blood and bodies coat the courtyards. There are no signs of life, no more duplicates, just this Jimmy and this Sweet Pea, it seems. Jimmy is aiming a gun at Hunter, with his sword at Sweet Pea's throat. A standstill. Jimmy shoots Sweet Pea in the head. "I've got 100 more where she came from," he says. Hunter puts down his sword. Jimmy tells him to call off the coup, but Hunter says he can't. Any abort command has to be given by 2 men as a failsafe, Hunter and Dr. Khan. Held at gunpoint, Hunter slowly pulls out his phone to call Dr. Khan, and he tells him to send every demon they have to the castle. Jimmy shoots him immediately, then he leaps on Hunter. We cut to Dr. Khan in the lab. Hundreds of demon officers in what looks like SWAT gear are pouring out of the lab towards the castle. Jimmy takes Hunter's phone and tries to tell Siri to abort the world coup. It's not that easy, unfortunately. Jimmy points his pistol at Hunter. Hunter tells him to look around. The castle is entirely surrounded by Hunter's demons. The second he pulls the trigger, he's dead. The only thing that's keeping them at bay is his hold on Hunter's life. While Jimmy is distracted, Hunter grabs his sword. He cuts off Jimmy's arm, then stabs him in the chest. Jimmy falls. Hunter leaps on him and slams his sword into his back. And Jimmy dies. It's quiet. Hunter's demons surround the castle. Actually, psych, Jimmy isn't dead. He wakes back up. He was just unconscious. Hunter has cut off all his limbs and pinned him to the floor with his sword. Jimmy is just as confused that he's not dead. "Have you learned nothing?" he asks Hunter. Hunter tells him he'll bleed out in 7 minutes, but first he wants Jimmy to see everlasting world peace finally achieved. It's only a few minutes till the coup. There's nothing Jimmy can do to stop it. He's literally just a torso. Hunter's got a gun pointed at him. There's 1,000 demons surrounding the castle, and there's no way he could stop all 172 demons stationed in every country on Earth. Hunter shows Jimmy the new global flag he designed. It's just a projection of the Earth. No borders, no wars, no genocides, no famines. He'll funnel every country's military budget straight into public works projects. Levees and dams, medical technology, feeding the world's hungry, clean energy, maybe even a guaranteed basic income. Hunter asks Jimmy if he has any last words. Jimmy says, "Siri, call Dr. Khan." Before he can stop it, Hunter's phone calls the lab. Sweet Pea picks up on the other side. Once the army of demons left, Sweet Pea duplicates were able to waltz in and secure the lab pretty easily. After exsanguinating 97 Sweet Peas into the demonizer, they have enough blood to create an orb radius large enough to engulf the entire Earth. Hunter falls to his knees. Jimmy tells Siri to unleash all their defenses. Siri unleashes the Ebola, cannons, wild baboons, napalm, and a tritium bomb onto Hunter's demon army. They are slaughtered. Jimmy laughs maniacally. The clock hits midnight Greenwich time. All over the world, close personnel and staff rush world leaders and shoot themselves, leap off of buildings, and drive cars into bays, and no possessions take place. Every person on the planet has become a demon. If a demon dies near a demon, they die permanently. Meanwhile, in Osaka, a tritium bomb goes off. The castle is obliterated. Somewhere on the other side of the world, Jimmy and Sweet Pea watch the news. They see the castle explode. They won. The news mentions an inexplicable wave of suicides rocking the international community. It just leaves the two of them, Jimmy and Sweet Pea. All of their duplicates were likely killed. Any of their duplicates, or the demon army, or even Hunter himself, if any of them survived, it doesn't really matter anymore. They'd still be a demon, but so is everyone else on the planet. There's no one left to possess. Effectively, they'd be just another mortal, just like Jimmy and Sweet Pea. This starts to sink in for Sweet Pea. After hundreds of years of immortality, it's over. She's mortal. Sweet Pea starts yelling at Jimmy. He killed her, basically. He killed his own daughter, just so every random schmuck on the street can live in a representative democracy. Jimmy tries to remind her that she agreed to this, that she was on board from the start, but Sweet Pea tells him that he knew she would have followed him anywhere. Just because you and Gelman were miserable doesn't mean I had a death wish, she says. Jimmy tells her that one day she'll understand. He's not a good person. By his count, he's killed 6,012,000 people. That makes him 12 murders worse than Hitler. He knows he's never climbing out of that hole, but he says now something feels different. It's like for the first time in my life, my soul is oriented in the right direction, he says. It's like why his dad donated that $500 to a homeless shelter. He made a personal sacrifice to better someone else. Jimmy's basically made the ultimate sacrifice. He sacrificed the person he loves most in the world, his only child, to save humanity. I'm kind of like God in that way, he says. Sweet Pea is not having this, but Jimmy keeps going. He's not just like the Christian God. All major religions have some form of this teaching of personal sacrifice, so he's just godlike in general. Talking about world religions leads Jimmy to a realization. Gelman told him that Phaedra, the first demon, had a hand in creating all the great religions of the world. Judaism, Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, all paths up the same mountain, as they say. Take away the names of the specific prophets and popes, and you've got all the same basic ideas underneath. Don't be an a-hole. Do unto others. Don't kill people over stupid crap. Jimmy is quiet. He needs to think. There's still one more thing Gelman said that we don't have an answer for yet. He said there's a way to make a possession without physically killing yourself. What if that Catholic priest Jimmy talked to was right? He thought it was crap at the time, but those words came straight from Phaedra. He said a demon will leave its host body if it accepts a greater moral truth into its heart. What if that's how Jimmy's dad died? Sweet Pea could have killed him by being the closest person to him, even as a fetus, but why did he leave his body in the first place? What if it wasn't a heart attack? What if he'd just learned to be a good person and kept it going for 33 days? Sweet Pea says that's stupid. They've both been alive for 250 years. Wouldn't one of them have triggered that by now? Made a possession without dying by being good for 33 days? Jimmy thinks, no, they wouldn't have. But Jimmy says they're being good now, they just saved the world. But did they actually save the world? The implications start to set in. The entire planet is all demons now. If what Jimmy is saying is right, well, if it's true, I guess we'll find out next month. And that's Demon. Yep, the end. Jimmy and Sweet Pea saved the world by utterly dooming it and probably causing the deaths of untold billions of good people. The end. I love Demon. It's such a unique story. It's unlike anything I've ever read, both in the story and the visual style. The art is simplistic in its characters, but still shows a mastery of technique through the complexity of its backgrounds, the diversity of expression and emotion portrayed in the characters, and how cleanly and understandably it's able to communicate its action scenes. There's some really complicated concepts at play in the story, but I think it explains them very well in a way that's succinct and easy to grasp. I feel like I did an awful job explaining the process of creating duplicates through parallel universe possession, but I don't remember being confused at all by the idea when I read the comic. Just like Fleep, the story introduces problems and puzzles and sort of challenges the reader to think of solutions themselves before showing us the characters' clever or even brilliant solutions. And we're walked through their thought process, step by step, one discovery or conclusion at a time. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel like you're getting smarter as you read it, I feel like. I love stories of problem solving and ingenuity, especially with a character with simple powers that get used in ingenious ways and taken to their logical conclusions. In my head, I've always thought of this as the Monkey D. Luffy effect. Stories with a character with extraordinarily simple powers or abilities, where part of the enjoyment and satisfaction in reading is getting to see what creative and unexpected ways the character manages to use their ability. You may have noticed the incredibly reserved color palette of Demon. Throughout the entire story, there's no really bright or contrasting colors used. Basically, everything is either black, white, or some shade of red. I think that this is another way the visual style sort of disarms you through its simplicity. The simplistic and cartoon style is in great contrast to the very dark and violent tone of much of the story, and I think the fact that red is the main color used in the comic plays into the violence, blood, and gore that runs throughout the story. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into this strange and wonderful comic. If you like this style of video, please consider subscribing. I've got a lot more videos like this in the works, going in depth into some of my favorite stories in fiction. Thank you for watching.